This is Rucka. This is Rucka. We are here with Charles too, who is a very great YouTuber as well, Charles. So in a way, I'm introducing myself to your audience as well.
Yes.
Beginning this is confusing. We're not sure who should even speak or first and how we should do this. But I was thinking we could spend like 10, 15 minutes figuring out what to say first. And then we can have a conversation.
Yeah, that's the most interesting content. We'll start with that.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is going on my channel. I think it's going on yours as well. This is kind of a simulcast, except it's not cast. We're pre-recording it. So
it is technically a stream, but you'd have to guess the URL in order to watch this, and I doubt anybody is paying attention that closely. So
yeah. All right. So good to see you. We had a conversation for several hours, and that was a great conversation. Since then, I've done some videos. I've done a couple of live appearances, and you also have made a lot of content. You do weekly videos with the occasional spontaneous.
Yes. Yeah, I put up a podcast every Monday, and then just other things whenever I have something to put up.
Yeah. So your content it's very high level philosophy. It's very integrated. And you're accessible, obviously. I can contact you. We can have this conversation. You're not dead or very old or just simply unavailable for me to contact directly like some other very high level philosophers. So yeah, so your channel, it's kind of it's a very important one for me to up my philosophy game. Have you been paying attention to some of the things I've done recently?
Yeah, I watch everything you put out, including all your gaming streams, and most of them I see live while you're doing them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've seen all the stuff you've been doing in Europe, and
And we've got more of that coming soon. Probably a little bit of my European stuff that was recorded. I'll be releasing once I have a chance to take a look at it. It was a little bit nerve-wracking. I wouldn't say nerve-wracking, but a little awkward, I would say, because so I'm in London, which a place I've never been. I got the word out that I'll be making these appearances, and I don't even know who's in the audience. I mean, I do know some of them are there because they go to this weekly Ayn Rand meetup. And then some of them are there because they're fans of mine. And I'm not sure to what extent these two groups overlap. And I'm not sure to what extent there's more people there and one of them was on a Friday night. So that's way different than a Tuesday night. It's like Friday night. I feel like as an entertainer, we need to have some fun. And, my fans want to hear me play some songs. And then the philosophy audience, they probably want to hear about philosophy. And I want to talk philosophy, but it's like, it was very confusing, very, very strange crossing of these different worlds. But as I pointed out there to the audience, I live in both worlds. And bringing the two together is sort of like bringing my different worlds together. And it's been an interesting process. And I found that the live audience was pretty receptive. Like I spoke to them during like an intermission period and then after at the end, and I got nothing but positive feedback from them. So maybe I was overthinking it at my end in trying to figure out how best to present the material. So you've been watching the gaming streams, and maybe we can have kind of a discussion doing that. Something I'm missing right now is my game. Like I love playing video games, like my side scrolling stuff. Like I like doing that while I'm on the phone, while I'm talking. Like to me, it's just something to do and look at while I'm having a conversation. So maybe in the future we can get this going while I'm playing my game, and then I'm just thrilled. So yeah, maybe we can do that. It's been difficult. I don't know if difficult is the word, but it's been a challenge to figure out how to go about those gaming streams. I typically have Dreadmere with me, who's a great conversationalist, and he's very interested in what it is that I'm talking about. I would rather go into it with something to talk about rather than just turn to the phones, as they would say in the days of radio, and rather than just taking questions. The questions are sometimes very interesting, sometimes very kind of repetitive. Libertarianism, guns, Israel, and random philosophies that I've never heard of and how they relate to objectivism. So, but still a lot of fun, though. Still often very fun. And again, a little bit nerve-wracking. I know I keep using that word, but just a little awkward in how to reconcile these different worlds when I don't know who's watching. Like, do they want to be entertained, or do they want to talk philosophy? And I know ultimately the answer is I should just be creating the content that I want to make, and that's typically what I end up doing. Now that I'm done with my monologue, any thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. I could go off of a few different things.
Yeah.
Well, first, yes, I watched your I watched the Q&A you did solo, the one you put up in London, and yes, I noticed that when you were answering questions, you didn't really quite know who's the audience here. What's the breakdown? Who should I be talking to? Why are people here? Am I just going to bore them with philosophy, or are they here for philosophy and I'm going to be talking about my career? So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Struggling with who your audience is. That's something I've struggled with too. I don't know. Am I here for laymen, or am I here for objectivists specifically? And I go back and forth, and I'm not sure I've quite figured that out yet. I basically just talk about what's interesting to me, and hope that's interesting to other people. And then what was the other thing you were talking about? Oh yeah, liking to play games while you do other stuff. Yes, that's actually very important psychologically. You know, I don't know if you've been in the zone, right? Like, you are just acting from the subconscious and working better than you would be working if you were actively focusing on what you were doing, because you have it automatized. So focus, uh, any focal awareness on what you're doing can only mess you up, because you're, call it overthinking, but it's because you've already programmed yourself to do it. I noticed this with racing games. That's my go-to. That's the concrete I think of when I'm in the zone, because you just know what you're supposed to do. Drift around this corner, do this. You have all the mechanics in your mind. And I always notice if I'm talking to somebody else, or I'm distracted while I'm playing a racing game, I do way better, because I'm just acting from the subconscious. That's what you do when you write or wash dishes or do anything you just know how to do. So I use that technique deliberately all the time. When I'm listening to a podcast, I try to occupy myself with something else. That way I get the podcast better and I do the thing I'm doing better. Now, it's a specific kind of thing. It can't be something new you don't yet know how to do, because then you haven't programmed yourself to deal with it. But if you have, that's a very useful technique. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and I do that all the time. Yeah, for games, so you're trying to figure out what to play?
Me?
Are you like your Keen?
I think Commander Keen is going to be my indefinitely. It's just going to be what I play during these live streams. This is borderline embarrassing, but I bought my laptop because I needed a PC, because I can only play Keen, the mods specifically. Like, they made mods, they made customized Keen 8, 9, and 10. 7, 8, 9, and 10 actually. And you can't play mods on that. Like, there's no DOS box to play on Mac, or they tried to make it, but it didn't work for me. So I got a laptop. Plus, I want to have something I can take with me where I go. And yeah, I really want, I love that game so much. It's like it's just everything. It's everything I look for in a game. It's weird. It's weird to me that everyone else is not into it. But once I'm done with those games, I'll probably look for some other DOS games. I love the retro thing. I was talking to the MythCon people. They're the guys who put on that Milwaukee Atheist Convention, and they've been paying attention to what I do, and they thought that like I was being ironic in playing these old games. Like everyone else is playing Fortnite or whatever, and I'm playing Commander Keen. I'm not being ironic. That's just, there's nothing I'd rather be playing. Anyway, let's talk about, yeah. So you said that it was kind of awkward, or that it was, I was trying to find, that was a Monday night, by the way. So that was like when I first got to London, I went straight to this place, and that was cool. And that was me like in my more comfortable sort of introduction to London. But there was another night, which I've got the footage, and I'm going to probably cut out certain parts. I'm going to select what I like about it and kind of make that a video rather than just have a continuous stream of some awkwardness, and just kind of keep the content, keep what's actually, worth seeing, I think. But so it was a Friday night, and it was just kind of confusing. And this guy got up there and did stand up first, and then brought me up, and I felt like I needed to get up there and tell some jokes, and it was just weird. But I think the more I do these types of things, the more I build a brand as a commentator. And I am there. I do have sort of a budding audience of people interested in philosophy, people interested in hearing me talk. Even if they're not that interested in Rand, they're interested in hearing me talk about Rand. In the way that I like, I saw Ruben do stand up a month ago. It's not that I'm that eager to know his humor, his comedy routine. It's that he's a meme. Like watching him on stage, it's like, oh my God, it's the internet guy, or Sargon, internet guy. It's so when someone's a meme, when their face is like a brand of its own, you just kind of want to watch them talk almost about anything. You just kind of want to see them, their stream of consciousness, I guess. So, did you hear me say anything? Either at the video you mentioned, at that London video you mentioned, or at the panel with Sargon, or anything I've posted recently. Did you hear me make any errors in your opinion? Did you hear me say anything that you thought could use some feedback that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a lot of content. Go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second. That happens every so often. I asked the question and then didn't hear the answer.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, well, there's a lot of content there. Nothing sticks out. I did pay attention. I was watching it, not distracted or anything. Nothing stuck out as egregiously wrong. Yeah, it seemed fine to me as far as it went. But I probably wasn't watching it with the frame of mind appropriate for criticism. I was just watching it for my own pleasure because I like seeing people talk about objectivism in public, and it's interesting to me to see what kind of questions get asked. Yeah, who was that young kid who was asking you? Actually, asked you about me, I think.
Yeah, the guy's 15. He's a British fellow. I don't know him very well, but yeah, he kind of, it was, yeah, he's young. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was just curious if I would recognize him, if he's somebody who, sends me questions all the time or something.
I don't know. Maybe he has, but yeah, interesting to. I'm sure it was somewhat surreal at your end to hear some guy in England. It's weird for me when people. It's like meeting someone that actually watched that conversation or something. So the kid he had some choice words for about Yaron Brook and ARI and I know you're not.
Wasn't he? I couldn't hear it all. The audio wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I thought he was asking from a position of sympathy toward your own.
I think he might have
not
been
towards.
saying like he might have ended it with like because you're on an ARI. I don't know. I don't know. It sounded like he
Oh,
was on your side or I don't know where he was coming from. But as I told him and as I told you the last time we spoke,
no, your
I think
response was fair. I remember what you said.
mhm,
That was
yeah,
totally
yeah.
fine.
So and just to remind the audience here today, I think a certain degree of criticism that someone like Yaron Brook gets needs to be in the place in the context of that he's speaking off the cuff, and we don't realize how difficult that is until we're in that position, and we still don't know what it's like because we're not doing that as much as he is to with the live audience that he is and as frequently. So there's that, and then beyond that, I think criticism is valid whether it's towards him, whether it's towards anyone else, and as I told you last time, when you criticize like ARI, it reminds me of when Ruben was asking me what my problem is with like Ben Shapiro. He was just like, "Who cares?" Ben Shapiro is more or less pro-capitalism, maybe even more than just more or less. Ben Shapiro's a capitalist guy. He's a libertarian type. What's the big deal if his philosophy isn't my philosophy? And I tried explaining to Ruben. I was like, "No, you don't understand. That's what makes the difference." And maybe and talking to you about ARI, like hearing you criticize them, my thing is like, what's the big deal? Like you can disagree with them. Like where's the harm? And I was speculating that maybe from your point of view, it's these nitty
Right.
gritty differences that make all the difference. Would you say that's a fair analogy?
Yeah, I think that's right. Uh, it's interesting because it's hard to separate Yaron from ARI because he was the head of it. So a lot of times when I'm talking about him, I'm talking about what I mean is ARI. I actually think Yaron is better. He's one of the best people there. I would definitely rather have him than Oncar or Greg Salmieri as the public spokesman, even though, my non-moral problem with Yaron is that he's not a philosopher. He's fine. But I think the public face of a philosophy should be a philosopher, ideally. And he's not. That's not a moral fault on his part. He's interested in what he's interested in. That's totally fine. Um, but then who would they get as the public face if they wanted a philosopher? Oncar, Gate, Greg Salmieri? Those people are no one has ever become interested in objectivism from hearing them talk. So I would choose your own any day of the week, even though he has not as strong a grasp on the technical details or whatever. But he's definitely he has some personality. I always put him in the middle. You have like the old school people like Peikoff and Ayn Rand herself, even more than that. And then the very young people who are just totally dead. They're zombies. And then you have the middle people like your own, who still have some personality and some edge and some passion. But yeah, I don't like being the anti-ARI guy, mostly because I think they'll be historically irrelevant and not convince anyone of anything, so I don't want to waste my time on them. But
As long as you're not the anti-ARI guy, no. Well, what is your what is the issue with someone like Greg Salmieri or Oncar Gate? Is it that they're philosophically misguided in your view, or is it just that their charisma is not what you'd like it to be, or is it something else?
well, outside of Leonard Peikoff and Harry Binswanger, I think Greg Salmieri is the brightest uh, philosophical mind around. He's had some great ideas, but I think the culture at ARI is just one of. I mean, I don't want to just repeat myself, but I think we talked about this last time. It's appeasement. They're interested in. I mean, when Onkar comes out on stage, when I was at Ocon, he says, the first thing he talks about is how there are so many fewer kooks and weirdos in the movement now. I'm like, okay, that's good. but emphasis and selection is just as important as content. Why is that the first thing you're bringing up? That suggests an invalid prioritization. And the reason why that is, I mean, this is the thing. I have a million anecdotes. No one is going to convince anyone. So I have to just trust whoever's watching this to say, look, just keep your eyes open. Keep in mind what I am telling you abstractly. And I trust that if you keep your eyes open, you will start to see pieces connect with what I'm talking about. They are way more interested. Like you started using the word firebrand, I noticed at your talk. That's what Ayn Rand was. That's what I am. And that's what they say you shouldn't be.
Who says that?
People associated with ARI. I mean, they don't literally say you shouldn't be, but they clearly don't understand how Ayn Rand was successful that way. And so they say, well, you can be ambassadorial, just, and this is what they teach in their Objectivist Academic Center. You have to act like just everybody else. You have something to learn from everybody else, which is what Jordan Peterson says. Any similarity to Jordan Peterson, I take as prima facie suspicious. But this is what they say. Act like you have something to learn from everyone. No, that's not what Ayn Rand did. Ayn Rand was absolutely ruthless. They are much too focused with getting the approval of the mainstream. They don't understand how to change minds. They don't understand why Ayn Rand was as successful as she was. It's crazy. You hear about Ayn Rand, I hear Ayn Rand mentioned more than Karl Marx today. That's surprising to me. It's crazy. And I'm not paying attention to objectivist sources. I watch, video game things like Giant Bomb and movie things like Red Letter Media. I hear Ayn Rand alluded to way more often than Marx. Why? What made her stand out so much? ARI does not understand that. They think her whole method was wrong and that you have to go out there and be ambassadorial and don't make a fuss and don't be mean to people. And I think their treatment of young people is particularly vicious. I don't know if you ever tried to get involved with any of their programs or anything, but it is very revealing that like their main question on their questionnaire is, how many non-objectivist books have you read lately? And then when you talk to them, it's, oh, well, what have you read that's not objectivist? What have you read that's not Ayn Rand? I actually think they have a thing, what objectivist books have you read? I always got the feeling, and I still think it's true, the more you put on there, like if you list, oh yeah, I read everything by Ayn Rand, I think they consider that a mark against you. You are an embarrassment to them if you're a zealot. You're a fanatic. You're going to embarrass us in the mainstream. Don't go out there and being crazy and fanatical and, don't take ideas seriously. That's embarrassing. Nobody does that these days. Again, I can't prove that right now. I can't give you some combination of words that will prove that. Mm-hmm. But I think anybody who pays attention over the long term, that took me a long time, but if you pay attention over the long term, you will see that the only thing that integrates all of their actions, the only thing that makes sense of their whole policy of coming at the world and advocating Ayn Rand's ideas, if you can call it that, is what I just said. It's a policy of appeasement rather than conversion. And yeah, I know you're supposed to do it because you like it. I agree with that. But they are an activist organization. That's what they do. They're devoted to spreading Ayn Rand's ideas. And some people love to do that as a career, as a productive purpose, and that's great. But I think their attitude toward that is all wrong. And
all right. Well, yeah, I bring this up not as their defense attorney, but also not as somebody who has a problem with them or anything like that. I tend to look at them as like, what can I get from them? And they do make available lots of content that I've benefited from and continue to benefit from. And we wouldn't be here right now if not for Iran. We, meaning you and I, would not be having this conversation if not for my journey, which was influenced by them. But and that's not to say any of your criticisms are invalid, and I was already sold when I came across them. Like I was already interested in anything that had to do with Rand. So what do you think of the idea that maybe they shouldn't have the name Ayn Rand in the name of their organization? Like they maybe the objectivist, society, the Objectivist Institute, as in people who agree, people who are objectivists are writing books and giving lectures, and nobody sees the name Ayn Rand over the stage when they're up there. What do you think of that as something that might make it more appropriate in your opinion?
I don't think that's really the problem. I don't have a problem with them calling themselves the Ayn Rand Institute. And there are two more things I want to point out here. One, I don't have a problem with anybody who's sympathetic to them. Like, it seems virtually all legitimate objectivists are affiliated with ARI in some way. And I don't regard it as self-evident that they have a corrupt culture. It took a long time for me to figure it out. I don't have anything against anybody who likes them or goes to their events or gets something out of them. Like I said, I listen to your own. I don't hate your own. I get a lot out of a lot of the content they put out, but I think their approach to interacting with the culture is corrupt. But no, I don't have a problem with them calling themselves the Ayn Rand Institute. This is the thing. I regard them as objectivists. The fact that I criticize them is a compliment. If you compare them to like the Atlas Society, these David Kelly open system types, I don't criticize them because they are beneath contempt. I don't even consider them objectivists. So I don't criticize them. The fact that I criticize ARI is a compliment. I consider them objectivists, just bad ones. I don't even consider anybody else objectivists. So no, I don't have a problem with their name. They are objectivists, and I think they have a valid purpose, but I think they just have to understand that you change the world the way the social justice activists changed the world. Not in the sense of lighting campuses on fire. I think that undercuts them, but in the sense that, look, it wasn't 5 years ago that there were still jokes on TV about being transgender. Oh, this man is dressed like a woman. Isn't that funny? There is no straighter contradiction than man is a woman. Now, they have now made it taboo to make that joke. They were laughed at 5 years ago, but they had the whole culture come to their side. How did they do that? It's because they didn't care if they were looked at as kooks or weirdos, as Oncar would put it. They didn't care about that. They went out there, they said, this is right, you're wrong, and you're immoral for not being on this side. If they can move the culture that far with such a ludicrously irrational set of ideas, how much could the Ayn Rand Institute have done with the truth, which is what they have, but they're too afraid to use it. And when you have truth versus morality, morality wins. Now, truth plus morality beats just morality, but if you set the truth against morality, guess what? You lose.
Interesting. When I heard Oncar say we've got much less weirdos now, what I took from that is he was saying there are less people here, less creepy guys misreading Rand and pushing people away. Now, like, we're more integrated by and large. People in the scene are now more integrated and more down to earth, so to speak. That's what I took away from that. Maybe you also heard it the same way, but you think that was a weird place to focus on.
Yeah, first of all, I don't have the context to even know if that's true, so I can't criticize him on that. But that, like I said, that's a good thing. You don't want, I've definitely had there are all kinds of, yes, kooks and weirdos out there misrepresenting Ayn Rand who have no idea what they're talking about. It's a good thing to have that phenomenon diminished. So I'm not criticizing that. What I'm saying is putting that front and center when you integrate that with a lot of the other actions that ARI takes, suggests an improper attitude. It's not bad to be against having weirdos, but if you combine that with all of the other emphasis on being, it's clear that their motive for that is not the legitimate motive of not wanting Ayn Rand misrepresented, but the motive of just a second-handed motive of not wanting to seem weird in the mainstream. I mean, you see, they're still pushing getting all these people in colleges, and well, whatever. I think we went into that last time, so I won't go into that. But I think that's a disastrous cultural and personal strategy. It destroys your soul. Peikoff got out of university because he couldn't take it. Like, why do they think this works? You're killing yourself if
I think, I mean, I don't remember how the conversation went last time exactly, but I think the idea is, since intellectuals are so influential, like the social justice warriors you mentioned, they came out of university. So if objectivism gets a foot into the university, then over time, I guess the theory goes, objectivism could spread through the minds of students. Is that, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what they think. I just think that because education is so controlled by the government and you have to give up so much in order to stay in that system, it's like, what are you winning? It's like the big tent phenomenon. Like, okay, if you water down your message to win, what was the point of winning in the first place?
Yeah, that's interesting. So this is all interesting stuff. Again, I don't like to say, well, ARI is irrelevant in the eyes of history, because I don't know that, but I would say they don't weigh heavily on my consciousness. Again, I only look at them as like, oh, here's something that has to do with Rand, where a lot of content comes out. Hopefully nobody over there hates me too much. Hopefully I'm never, banished from participating as an attendee at any of their stuff, because I enjoy consuming what they produce, and that's, that, and I'm not very focused on spreading the message. Not to say that you are so much, but I don't even think about it, because I guess I think about it a bit. It just seems so hopeless. I mean, well, let's
I agree completely. I don't care about spreading the message at all. I care about working on the philosophical problems that I think are interesting and then getting them out in objective terms. And if other people like that, great. But I have no illusions about saving the world.
Right. So there was a moment when I was talking to Sargon on the stage at the free speech panel, and he was explaining to me, not in the most condescending voice in his arsenal. Like, I've heard him use more condescending, gentle tones with people. So he does have some respect for me and the ideas that I'm advocating for. But he was explaining to me that, oh, you act first based on your feelings, and then your mind justifies it. And he was not saying this stuff a year ago or even 6 months ago. It's my opinion. It's my educated guess that he came across objectivism, at least to the extent that it's presented in the ominous parallels, and then he had some pressure applied to him when he was out there talking to people like Richard Spencer and making the case that ideas are the motor of history. And he kind of went running back to the group from which he came, the skeptics, the whatever they are, the classical liberals, or whatever it is. And he came across this deterministic, whether or not Sargon wants to call it that, that's what they are, right? Would you say evolutionary psychologists is a good way to sum up the hate, Jonathan Haidt?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes, and him, Peterson, Weinstein, all these people are the same.
Okay, so as Sargon was telling me this stuff, I started to wonder, like, are we in a dark age? Like, is there something correct about evolutionary psychology as you completely reject it 100%. There's nothing in there that is scientific, in your opinion?
Okay. We are organisms. We evolved due to the process of natural selection. Our brains evolved in that way. Our minds reflect that. Here's the problem with how these people interpret tabula rasa. This is why concepts are so important, and it is not just semantics. When they say tabula rasa is wrong, what they are combining is the mechanism and the content. Look, the fact that you get angry at injustice, that is evolutionarily ingrained. You can't change that. That's hardwired. What you regard as injustice is not. The content that triggers the mechanism is not. And we can see this. Everyone on Earth, I mean, maybe not some brain damaged people, but vast majority, healthy people get angry at injustice. That's what anger is. But what you think is unjust, what triggers anger, what concretes trigger anger, that is a product of your abstract thought, of your evaluations. You can take a young socialist, and he will get angry that a banker is evading taxes by having an offshore account. Now, if you convince him that he's retarded and objectivism is true, then he will see the government expropriating taxes from this businessman, and he will get angry at that. Now, what? Did his genes change? No, just his abstract evaluation changed. Now, it's still injustice. That is ingrained. That's evolution, but that's not how these people think. I have a lot to say about this. So if you want to interrupt me at any point, go ahead. Because
so when you say to be upset by injustice is ingrained, is it to say that more simply in a way is to say, or maybe more complicatedly is to say the need for cause and effect to make sense, the need to understand reality. So an injustice being like a bastardization of cause and effect, an injustice being a violation of an honest approach to reality. Maybe I just like people, they need things to make sense. They need cause and effect. They need certain rules in place. And like when I was a teenager, before I read Rand, I thought evolution, again, yeah, like we evolved, and every choice we make is what evolution caused us to do. And all of culture is just us being animals and behaving like animals and mating rituals and all that. And for that reason, I saw eating meat as wrong. I saw it as basically we are slaughtering our distant relatives, and they are trapped inside the body of an animal that cannot talk. But the way I saw it, like, these are basically people trapped inside the body of a cow. And what the hell's the difference between us and them? Just that we can talk, and maybe our thoughts are a little bit more advanced, but beyond that, we are killing our cousins. That's the way I saw it at the time. And for that reason, when I was still hungry. I mean, I was high and had the munchies, and I was hungry, so I still ate whatever I wanted to eat, but felt guilty about it. But I hated when people would eat meat and not acknowledge that what they're doing, like that this is, like when I saw religious people especially think it was just entitled to them, that God had put these animals on earth for them to consume. That pissed me off. Like, oh, you don't even realize, you don't even get it. And so I saw it as sort of like epically unjust that these animals were being served to these totalitarian mystics, these apes who did not know they were apes, eating these chickens and these cows, like who had been condemned to a life of slavery and early death. So that triggered me morally at the time. Today, I see religious people eating meat, and I think, good. they're living on Earth. They're enjoying what life has to offer. I'd like them to be more pagan, but at least they're enjoying a delicious meal, and they're not equating a human being with a cow. So yeah, the abstract beliefs that a person has then are what determine what they're morally outraged by. And then sometimes sometimes your moral anger can override your conscious convictions, right? So like a communist can kill all these people in the name of communism, but it eats at his conscience, or he'll pull back and say, okay, this is wrong, even though it consists with all of his conscious convictions. Would you say that happens at times, or would that need to be kind of studied case by case?
Well, that's I mean, if okay, serious believers of any irrational philosophy are necessarily immoral, like, because you have to evade. It's the people sitting in church are not necessarily evil. They may just be confused, but the priest definitely is.
Yeah.
Like, you don't any intellectual committed to a wrong worldview, that is not honest. So in terms of a mass murdering communist, yeah, that's just digging the hole. He knows he evaded, and now there are more and more serious consequences to his evasion. And partly that's what he wants, but it's also what hurts him. I mean, this is the death premise from Atlas Shrugged. But look, the thing that confuses people is there are contradictory people, like, and you have to describe them in contradictory terms. So there are a lot of people who make this mistake, and they think, if I can't describe somebody in a way that makes perfect sense, then I got something wrong. No, you're just describing the contradiction in them. So anyway, I don't know if that.
Can you explain that again? The describing something in them.
Yeah. So I noticed recently there is this phenomenon of, so this is a new fallacy, I think. I don't think this fallacy has been identified explicitly, and I was talking with my girlfriend about it, and we have a tentative name for it, like the all roads lead to Rome fallacy. It's this idea that, I'm sure you've encountered this. People think, oh, well, if you're an altruist, what's good for other people? Capitalism is the best thing for other people. So why aren't altruists capitalists? Or pragmatism. Well, what works is what's true, right? So why don't they care about truth? So, I mean, pragmatists are really, what's the big deal there? So, can't remember how we got onto this. Just contradictions in people.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but
yeah. So, well, let me take another example. There's this famous guy called Ken Arrow, and he has this idea about democracy, different ways of voting, right? So, there are different ways of voting, especially when you have multiple candidates. It's how do you choose what the majority of people actually selected? Now, that can be really difficult if you have multiple rounds and different candidates. Now, what he claimed to show is that there is no possible system that shows you what people actually chose. Now, there is, if you have the restriction of people voting in a non-contradictory way. But if people change their priorities, like on the second tier of voting, like runoff voting, you vote the first round and then you vote the second round once you've eliminated somebody. If people change their minds in a way that contradicts their preferences from the first time, yes, you're going to get contradictory results. So his view is, well, there's no system that can give you a non-contradictory result. But you can't have a system that processes contradictory inputs and gives you a non-contradictory result.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's just the example I always think of. So, uh, in describing, uh, uh, I don't know, I've gone totally off track here.
I know it began with talking about moral injustice and being upset by
The
injustice.
communist, the mass
Mhm.
murdering communist, and
Yeah.
all that. And you were saying, what does he feel it in his
Not
conscience?
not necessarily like the dictator, but just let's say somebody's a communist and he's part of an army that's committing atrocities or something, and and he pulls back. He doesn't want to hurt somebody, even though killing this innocent child, for instance, is fully fair game if communism is legitimate because it serves the purpose. But he pulls back because something about it bothers him. When people say like, "Oh, we all know that murder is wrong. We all know it. That's morality. We all just know it." Maybe like that's that sense of right and wrong an implicit adherence to reality, understanding that killing this person or committing this act it doesn't add up with the hierarchy that is required for living.
Yeah. So, what's your question about how he feels?
Like does sometimes like you brought up that your convictions determine what
Right.
you're morally outraged by, what type of what you consider to be injustice. And I said, does sometimes your conscience eat at you, be like, even though your conscious convictions say that all your actions are fine, but your more implicit understanding of that reason is required to live, that rational behavior is required,
Right.
that people need to be rational. Violating people's rights then bothers you because even though you academically are on board with communism, but on more of a basic level,
Yeah.
you're sensing something is wrong. And I don't know how much of this is starting to sound like I'm advocating for intuition as a means
No, no,
of
no, no, no. I know
cognition.
exactly what you're saying.
You do. I just want to make sure
Okay.
we
Yeah.
clarify what we're getting at. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I think I understand what you're saying now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there. Uh, as long as you're living and taking basically rational actions on any level, like, I want to butter my toast, so I get the butter out of the refrigerator. Like, that's some level of rationality. You're adhering to reality on some level. Um, yes, there's a contradiction, ultimately a contradiction between that and being a communist. And yeah, that can come out. Now, it's a choice as to whether you let that influence your actions or not. But yeah, your view that uh, uh, avoiding taxes is wrong, or preserving your own life in the face of the needs of the proletariat is wrong. Uh, when that comes into conflict with this more basic view you're saying of killing people is wrong, sending them to the gulag is wrong. I guess your question is what happens then when these two things come into conflict?
Yeah, when things come into conflict. So like or just yeah, I don't know if I was asking what happens then, but just does I guess I was saying, do sometimes it appears that sometimes your conscious convictions might be overridden by that part of you that understands that getting the butter from the fridge is how people live, and violating that cause effect rational ability to live in someone else's life is a violation of what's required to live altogether.
Yeah, people can I mean, it's extraordinary, but somebody who's far down that road can choose to think, okay, what's going on here? Does this make sense? And then override. Yeah, you can override your emotions. I guess is what you're ultimately asking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, you can do that. Uh, I'm just saying that look, emotions are factual, just like anything else. It's just cause and effect. If you if you have a certain evaluation, it leads to a certain emotion. So to go back to the evolutionary psychologist, yeah, did you have anything else specific you wanted to say about that? I can't remember where I was when we went off on this, but
so I asked if there is anything legitimate to evolutionary psychology. You said, look, we are evolved. The fact that we respond to injustice a certain way is evolution. I commented that need for justice is required in the same way that a need to understand the world, for cause and effect to be properly in place. And you're not, am I right about when I say that?
Yeah, that's yeah, cause and effect definitely comes into it. That is an aspect of injustice. It's I acted this way, I deserve this, right? Cause and effect. So you're not getting what you deserve. It's unfair. That's what causes anger. So yes, that you could say that reduces to a subtype of cause and effect. It's like this is the cause and effect that has to be allowed to happen in order for me to survive. That's what it comes down to.
And yeah, you know what's interesting, just kind of like occurs to me, like, even though like you and I, we're both entertainers in our, in our own way, as even in the realm of commentary, we both do kind of approach the content we deliver from the standpoint of like, what's the best way to articulate what it is that I'm trying to say. But when we're talking to each other, I'm trying to get clarity on something. Maybe you're trying to help me understand a certain way. And it's almost like we're training, like when we're having this conversation, like it's like we're at the gym or something. It's
Yeah,
like
that's a good way to think about it.
It's not game time. We are so like someone who watches this video might think like, okay, first they're talking for a half hour about ARI, which I don't even know what that is. Then they're talking about evolutionary psychology, but they're not just talking shit. I mean, they are, but they're getting into stuff that, anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting how uninteresting it might be to some people, or like not everyone might understand like what the point of this is. I'm seeing the benefit of this sort of long term, and it is still content. It is still something for somebody that someone might find interesting. Again, because we're memes, and also because it does relate to ideas. So anyway, I asked Sargon, I said, name me an evolutionary psychologist who is not religious and believes in free will. And he tried telling me that Jonathan Haidt does believe in free will, which is now he's just playing himself, because his own friends in that camp they make fun of people that believe in free will. But then, you push Sargon on it, and he explains what he means by free will. He's just saying there's choice or an illusion of choice, and those are both free will. So I love how these people don't realize they're going through the motions that philosophers went through, a very long time ago. They think this is original. They think their little YouTube conversations are fresh content. One might say that the conversation you and I are having might have been had, 20 years ago by people influenced by Ayn Rand, I suppose. But nonetheless, it's like people think that like playing this compatibilist game with free will is like, oh, I figured it out. Oh, here's what we'll do. Or in the realm of politics, let's, the liberalist whole like, oh, let's, where do rights come from? Not where do rights come from, but like, what are our rights? What do you have free speech? Do you have free property? Where does your right to property end? And it's like, they think this is original. Like they think trying to engineer society is like this new idea that no one ever had before. Anyway, so I asked Sargon, I said, name me an evolutionary psychologist that believes in free will and is not religious at all. Because I was thinking like Jordan Peterson, he has religious elements, and arguably that's where he gets his elements of free will, right? But somebody commented on the video and said, Gad Sad, evolutionary psychologist, atheist, believes in free will. Are you familiar? Because I'm not too familiar with Gad.
I am very familiar with him.
Okay.
I've never heard him talk about free will, but I would assume he's some kind of compatibilist.
Okay. I looked it up. So I Googled it. He's tweeted mocking determinism, saying like, I'm obviously making a choice to tweet this right now. It's not determined by. So I wonder if that being the case, and maybe it is compatibilist. If you push him hard enough, he'll say, okay, there is a genetic cause for it, but it is a choice. But that choice is then determined by evolution. I don't know. So maybe if we push him hard enough, he doesn't actually believe in the blank slate, in the actual choice being a choice. But taking him at sort of face value, that he's not mocking the idea of free will. So at least there's something to work with there, and he's not religious at all. I wonder if he's compartmentalized. Like I wonder if the extent he does believe in free will is sort of conflicts with some of the other things that he believes. So you say you're very familiar with Gad, and so I don't know. I guess so. Feel free to now sound off.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on your own show.
I did not know that he has.
Yeah, he's talked to your own, and I don't know. I've listened to a lot of him, but I've basically written him off because he's not original or interesting. But most of all, I strongly dislike his personality. Now, I try to avoid psychologizing, but he is incredibly second-handed. Like he is a Trump, Michael Cernovich, Milo. I know you're friends with Michael Malice, but also Michael Malice type, where he boasts in a way that is clearly second-handed. Like he is, like, if you just watch him, he's constantly talking about like he's self-aggrandizing, trying to build himself up, and that's fine in certain contexts, but the frequency with which he does it and the context in which he does it is revealing. So I don't watch much of him because I strongly dislike his personality. And yeah, I don't know. He's never said anything interesting as far as I can tell. He's like a B-list, C-list evolutionary psychologist. And I mean, in terms of internet popularity, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, I've never heard him say anything interesting, and I find him incredibly second-handed.
Oh, so I know very little. I think I started watching one of his interviews with Rubin, and maybe for the same reasons, didn't find him that interesting. I found his personality to be what I do like about him. Like he's like this big teddy bear. You like Armored Skeptic, who he's not known for being likable personality-wise. He's known for being kind of a tool, but
he kind of is.
I enjoy his content, same as you. But it's interesting that you dislike Gad Saad on some like personal level, and you do like Skeptic. So that's
right.
Interesting. Yeah. But anyway,
no, I like Skeptic because he's Skeptic is clearly second-handed too. I don't know if you ever saw his. He was trying to do his new Four Horsemen thing, where it was him and Sargon and the other. That was embarrassing. But with him, it comes off as, I've struggled with this. So this isn't like you're getting me at. I'm not confident with this evaluation, but I have to say, Skeptic's mannerisms I like more. And when he does come off as second-handed, it's more of an innocent thing with him. I take him as just like a child almost. He's cute to me. It's like he almost doesn't even know what he's doing. And he seems basically earnest in a way. I can't put my finger on it. So, if you can't say something explicitly, you can't claim it as an objective evaluation. So I don't, I can't make any final statements on this. But yeah, emotionally, subjectively, I like Armored Skeptic. I do not. I mean, Gad Saad, I can say objectively second-handed, but maybe Armored Skeptic is just as bad, but I don't think so.
So Gad Saad, nonetheless appears to be an evolutionary psychologist with some degree of belief in free will, and which doesn't come from God. Is that unusual in the intellectual world to have someone that seems to believe in free will and choices?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on what you mean. There's basically no one who believes in what they call libertarian free will, which means things could actually go one way or the other.
Mm.
Bunch of compatibilists say, yes, there's free will, but that doesn't conflict with determinism because, look, the universe was set from the beginning. Everything is already predestined, but that doesn't violate free will because you're still doing what you want to do. Compatibilism is just you're carving out this range of deterministic influences that you're going to separate out and say, okay, if it's only this range of influences that determined your decision, we're going to call that free will.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot imagine that Gadsad is a libertarian in terms of free will. That would be unbelievable to me. And there's no one like that. I can't think of a single non-religious person who believes in libertarian free will outside of objectivists. I can't think of one. I don't think there's anyone.
So someone might say, well, you make choices, but you only know what your options are. Like you only have the options you're even aware of. Like someone might invent something you haven't heard of yet. Like, so in that sense, they would say you only have a menu to pick from. Is that different from libertarian free will?
Well, I'll just give the objectivist view on this, which is that, yes, choice is limited. It's a choice between a definite number of options, but that doesn't mean it's not a choice. So this is why free will is causal and doesn't violate the law of identity or causality. Because you definitely choose within a set of options. You can't choose just anything. If you live before computers, you can't choose to be a computer programmer, right? But you have your choices. And the universe can be in a different state. That's what it boils down to. Like, is there an actual possibility for the universe to be in different states? Or is it all just predetermined? Look, everything was always going to be like this, but we call free will your action when it's not influenced by these certain factors. Or, like, is the future open? Could the future go this way or that way? If you say yes, the future could actually be different. Like it's not set. That's libertarian free will. That's what objectivists believe. Now, no, that doesn't mean you have an infinite number of options. You choose within a delimited range, but that's an actual choice. And that is the problem people have. They say, okay, how can you have causality but actually go one way or the other? How does causality match with that? Things are what they are. They act how they act. So how can you say then they split? They go this way or that way. And that's why people just can't wrap their minds around free will.
Yeah. Okay. Probably more to get into there, but I need to chew, as they say, on that and think of more. So so free will is definitely something I want to understand more. Really, just epistemology in general. It's like the more I look at the world, the more I realize just how fundamental the philosophical battle is. Like even just a few months ago, I was saying ethics. I think that was my main thing with Ruben, ethics. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, now I'm saying it really is that we can't even, people, they don't even think that they think.
That's great. That's great. Because I noticed the same thing when you were focusing on ethics. And I was like, okay. And yes, epistemology is the core of everything. People don't, knowing how to think is the basis of everything. If you don't know how to think, you don't know how to determine ethics or politics or anything else. Yeah, you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, so watch me talk to Ruben and explain to him why I can't deal with Ben Shapiro, not because of his forced altruism description of capitalism, but because, you know, his epistemology is a little bit off. Yeah, so reading Ominous Parallels, an impression I got from Peikoff is that the more philosophers came to embrace reason, the closer they would get to selfishness. Maybe they didn't realize they didn't. I don't remember if he was saying that the philosophers saw that consciously, but just the more reason became the means of knowledge, the more people would get close to selfishness. And it's like the impression I got from Peikoff is that philosophers would then do backflips and twists and look for a way to get away from selfishness. Again, I'm not sure if Peikoff was saying they were conscious of what they were doing, or if just that altruism was just kind of their implicit ethics, and so they had to find a way to make that work with philosophy, make that work with their epistemology. Is that what's your response?
Yeah, I don't think most were. I don't think most would say, "Oh yeah, I believe in reason, and therefore I'm an egoist." I think there was a lot of they didn't understand the connection. But the connection is one: if you use reason, you will discover that the only reason to value anything is how it relates to you. It's selfishness is the only reason to be rational, but also reason is itself egoistic because you have to rely on your mind. That's what reason is. Reason is I'm trusting my judgment, me. I'm not going off what you say. I'm being selfish and I'm going off what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I mean uh there is a link there, but yeah, I would agree. I don't think most people who advocate reason uh, historically immediately recognize the link. Some people do, but a lot don't.
And among the Enlightenment thinkers, so these were thinkers after, a couple centuries after Aristotle was, discovered by the Europeans. So this is what they call, so the Enlightenment came first and then the Age of Reason, right? So it goes Renaissance,
Oh, yeah.
Enlightenment.
Yeah. I mean, Aristotle was rediscovered in Christendom in Europe about 1200,
Mhm.
and then the Renaissance. The Renaissance, what defines the Renaissance is actually the rediscovery of the rest of the Greeks. So they get Aristotle first, and then they discover everybody else, and
Mm,
everybody else is like 1400 to 1600. And there's not really much philosophy that goes on that. There's like Francis Bacon, who's huge,
mm.
um, and then like there's no other famous philosopher from that time. Can you name anyone? The only person anybody can think of is Machiavelli. He's not exactly the full flowering of reason, um, but because most people were doing science then, like they were taking philosophy and applying it. Oh, this it's Aristotelian reason. Let's apply it to the world. So you have Da Vinci and all these people doing real science,
Mm.
and then the Enlightenment comes after the Renaissance. It's basically considered 18th century, so 1700s uh,
Mhm.
philosophy. And then you have this weird 1600 to 1700 period, and that's Descartes and Hobbes, and that's kind of this middle period. But yeah, I mean, uh, yeah, the Enlightenment is the age of reason. So
So, what is the difference then between the Renaissance and the Enlightenment in terms? It's just that people were more explicitly philosophical rather than
yeah,
just
people
arts and science.
right. Yeah, the Renaissance, yeah, was more focused on science. There weren't a lot of philosophers or original
Mm,
philosophers then. And then the Enlightenment was okay. Now we're starting to get new ideas on the basis of Aristotle. We're starting to get Locke going into politics and applying Aristotle. We're getting the rationalists and empiricists, Descartes
mhm,
and well, Locke was an empiricist. You have David Hume. I mean, there are a lot of people that objectivists kind of consider quote bad guys. It's kind of
mhm,
like Plato, though. Like, yeah, Plato was wrong, but he was Greek. He was
mhm,
rational. He was way better than any Christian. So there are a lot of people who were wrong in the Enlightenment, but they were trying to figure things out and using reason. And yeah, there was this false split between we have empirical knowledge versus rational knowledge, but it was such a rich, debate and trying to figure things out. So yeah, the 18th century, 1700s, that's when kind of the reintroduction of Aristotle finally produced, okay, now here's new philosophy on an Aristotelian basis. And then you have Kant come along and eclipse that, and everything goes to hell. And that's why we have what we have now.
So the empiricists said you get knowledge from your senses, but using your mind to understand this material.
Kind of. I mean, they didn't really believe in integration. I mean, there are different philosophers, of course, but it ultimately collapsed into skepticism with David Hume. And his idea was, look, you observe reality. How can you have logic? How can you have integration? How can you have non-contradiction? You have logic, which is based on non-contradiction. How can you say reality can't be non-contradictory? You're deriving that rule from reality. So if reality becomes contradictory, what are you going to say? You can't be that way. You got that rule from reality. So what the hell are you? I mean, reality is your basis. So his view was there is no cause and effect. Anything can occur from anything else in any moment. There's no way to predict anything. All you can know is what's right in front of you, what's right perceptually in front of you. And that's the ultimate collapse of the mistakes of empiricism, because they didn't believe you could take what you see and integrate it into anything higher.
And Hume, you would call a skeptic then? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
And is modern skepticism more or less the same as the Greek skepticism? Or is that these two different philosophies with the same name?
They're similar, but there were some differences. So, for instance, they called them Pyrrhonists. There's Pyrrhonic skepticism in Hellenistic philosophy. And it's interesting because all Greek philosophy after Aristotle was focused on this, what they call the great loss of nerve. It was like, we can't succeed in the world. We have to retreat into consciousness because this world is unknowable. How can we know if we're going to succeed? Every major school after Aristotle had this. So you have the Cynics and the Stoics. And I mean, Stoicism is self-evident. It's like, look, doesn't matter what happens in the real world. You're just stoic, you bear it, you kind of live in your mind. Hedonism is like that. Epicurus, people have this word Epicureanism, and it's supposed to be indulgence and everything. But Epicurus was actually very restrained. He only ate cheese and bread because he said, hey, if I eat all this good stuff, and then someday it's not around, all this fancy food, all this intense pleasure, then I'm going to be disappointed. So I eat the minimum possible so that I will never be disappointed. It's all this kind of retreat into consciousness. The world is unknowable. It's unpredictable. And this is actually this was also emphasized in skepticism in a way I don't think it was emphasized with Hume and later skeptics. It was ataraxia, they called it. It's this, like, skepticism is this way of achieving calmness, balance. It's, hey, I can't know anything, so why should I care about anything, basically. So skepticism was a means of not getting too invested in things.
Yeah. So even though the Stoics were very kind of strict, like be serious, and then the hedonists, I don't know if hedonism was a school, but Epicurus was like hedonism was his thing, and they said pleasure is a virtue, or looking for pleasure is a virtue. Even though those two seem like opposites, they were both essentially saying you can't control the world, so just live inside your mind.
Yes, because seeking pleasure was more about avoiding pain. It was more about avoiding the shock of pain, which is why Epicurus wasn't just go eat the best, craziest, most intense food you can find or get the most intense pleasure. It was eat the bare minimum, have the bare minimum of pleasure, so that if that ever goes away, no big deal to you. You don't care. You'll still have this baseline. Who cares? That's what hedonism started as. Now, there are other problems with hedonism interpreted in, the modern way, but that Epicurean sense was in line with all of the other schools of the time.
Now, you said these guys were post-Aristotle. Was Aristotle rejected in his own time, or did he have a certain degree of respect in his own time?
Definitely he had, I mean, people knew of him and they respected him, but they didn't understand that he was the guy they should be trying to figure out. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like he was ignored or anything, but they didn't appreciate how right he was, I would say.
Okay.
I would say that, yeah, after Aristotle, the Platonic era of philosophy began. I mean, it's not like they didn't know about Aristotle or implement him in any way, but it was essentially Platonic because they were retreating from the world into consciousness.
And you mentioned the Cynics. Who were
Mhm.
what was that all about?
The Cynics were basically just the Stoics come out of the Cynics. They're kind of the same thing. Like Stoics are just like advanced Cynics. So there's Diogenes is kind of the first Cynic. I mean, it's not. If you know what the Stoics believe, that's it. I don't really want to get too much into the
Okay.
details of the
I'm
Cynics,
still
but
learning about a
sure,
lot of
sure,
these
yeah.
different schools. I was just curious what the Cynics were about because I
Huh.
heard you mention them. Now, so this is actually breaking news. So I'm going to do an actual song, like a rap song, the history of philosophy, which
Mhm.
I cringe just saying it. Like, oh, I like it. Well, it almost was like, oh, he's going to spread objectivism, or he's going to give his opinion. It's like, no, I came across like a poem or something, kind of walk you through history, and I thought like, yeah, that sounds fun, but it's still going to be like biting, and it's going to be me. And I don't expect it to be very popular just because it's different from what I normally do, but it could surprise me. And I guess it wouldn't be much of a surprise, but it could blow up because people are into that stuff. They're into epic rap battles of history. Like they're
Yeah.
into this educational stuff,
Yeah.
told from an edgy perspective. So I'm not going to read you the lyrics, but I'm going to run some information I have by you and see
Okay.
if I'm wrong. Okay, so the Asians or the Oriental mystics, they were mystics, right? Confucius and Buddha, they were mystics. No,
I don't know if I don't know if I put Confucius in the same category as uh, the Buddha.
Buddha.
I mean, I'm not an expert on Confucius, but
Mhm.
he didn't seem as bad to me.
Okay, but he was a mystic,
Mm,
or is that a loaded
I
question?
don't know enough. I don't know
Okay,
enough
all
to
right,
say that.
good answer. They said okay. Buddha said life is suffering. I guess you like by your admission you're not fully qualified to answer, but I mean that's pretty basic Buddha. Life is
Mhm.
suffering. Yeah. So Thales was the first to, he said everything is water,
Mhm.
kind of putting everything into one group. The first attempt to explain everything.
Yes, it was the
Hmm.
first attempt at a natural
Hmm.
metaphysical integration.
Yeah. And then Heraclitus said, no, it's all fire.
Mhm.
He said nothing. He said, and by that he meant, and this is beyond what I'm presenting in the song, but just so I understand, when he says everything is fire, does he mean nothing is constant, like everything is constantly
Yes.
changing?
Yeah,
Okay.
fire doesn't even really matter. That's just the symbol for
Mhm.
Heraclitus.
I see.
Heraclitus believed that there is no such thing as identity. It's everything is changing. There's just this flux. There is no stability. There's no identity. There's no being. There's only becoming. His famous
Mm.
phrase was, "You can never stand. You can't stand in the same river twice, or the same stream
Right.
twice, or
So
something."
similar to Plato then. Plato also said because every no two trees are exactly the same, then there's no actual tree because you need a perfect tree somewhere to tell you what exactly a tree is. Or is that a
Kind of.
misunderstanding?
Well, first, Heraclitus had a student who said that I'm trying to remember the name. It was one of Plato's dialogues. Uh, uh, anyway, he said you can't step into the same river once. That is more Heraclitus or
Mm.
more Heraclitian than Heraclitus. That is perfect. I love that. Um, but what Plato was trying to do was reconcile Parmenides and Heraclitus because Parmenides said no, There's only identity. There are only things.
Mm-hmm.
There's no change at all. Nothing
Mm.
changes.
Right.
Heraclitus said, no, there's only change. There's no identity. So Plato said, well, there's change in this world, and then there's stability in the world of form. So he was trying to
I see.
reconcile it. Yeah.
And who said there's no change?
Parmenides.
And he and Zeno also agreed with that, right?
Yeah, he was a student, and
Okay.
he
Okay.
was saying motion is impossible. You know, Zeno's paradoxes.
I mentioned Zeno because it rhymed better, so I mentioned him. Okay, and then Pythagoras, he was into numbers. Yeah, he said everything is numbers. Basically, like that's where we get knowledge from in the abstract is what he meant.
That's
or
where
just
reality comes from. You know, Jordan Peterson cites this guy who says it from bit. It's like being comes from bits, like abstract mathematical information. That is so ancient. It comes from Pythagoras. Pythagoras says reality comes from these abstract geometric forms. So at bottom, they're just these immaterial abstract things, and they kind of become these physical things that we know.
Okay, and Zeno also invented dialectic, which is the same as saying debate.
I don't know about that.
That's just something I saw online. Like maybe it was Wikipedia or some website similar to Wikipedia.
Don't know enough, but that's usually attributed or associated with Socrates and Plato. But I don't know.
Okay.
It could be some.
I looked up Zeno and I saw it written in, maybe it was one of these like a philosophy Wikipedia, kind of a website dedicated to that. And it credited him. I think it was Wikipedia actually. It credited him for coming up with the dialectic. And he was earlier than Plato. Yeah,
Yes,
he was.
yes.
They were okay. Well, so anyway, that's, you know, if it turns out that's wrong, hopefully I find that out. And I realize like I can make an error in this. I don't think anyone's gonna have their life ruined because of an error. I don't think anyone's gonna throw philosophy in the trash altogether. All right. Well, hopefully not. Democritus. Democritus. Oh, I was planning a pronounce. Anyway, I'll mispronounce it for the sake of a rhyme. I guess Democritus is his name. He was the father of science, considered by some modern science.
Okay. This is something where objectivism would differ from the traditional view. You could say Thales, in a sense, was the father of science in the sense that he was looking for a natural explanation of things. More than that, you could say Aristotle, because he was doing science, integrating things logically, the senses. Then you could say Francis Bacon, because he kind of started actual science when science was starting, or I guess not started it, but science is not that old. Like real science, like doing experiments and figuring things out. That's like, 16th century. That's pretty late.
Yeah.
People say Democritus started science. Christopher Hitchens has an essay on this, I remember, related. It's because he was an atomist, right? Lucretius was his or not Lucretius, but Leucippus was his teacher, but we don't really know much about him. But people say, oh, well, atoms, that's science, right? The atomic theory. But the Greek view of atoms is much different from the 19th century view of atoms. It's very rationalistic. It's just this view that, there must be a smallest particle. And then they have these theories about, well, the smoothness of the particle on your tongue. If it's smooth, it creates pleasure. If it's rough, it creates sourness or, whatever.
These were the Greeks saying.
Yes, the Greeks.
Okay.
Yeah, Democritus. And so that is not, I would not, I don't think objectivism would not consider that science. That is rationalism. There's a certain truth you can infer philosophically that there must be a smallest, nature element of nature, but all of the inferences they make from that, not scientific at all. So I would not call them the first scientists or him the first scientist.
Well, he's been called the father of science. That's what I saw online. I love how I'm running this by you to like make sure I don't get anything correct, but as you correct it, I'm just like, yeah, but I still want to say it. Okay, was there already democracy in Greece before Democritus and all these? So
Oh, you're just associating his name from
yeah, was this democracy named after him, or
No, I don't think so.
were they already voting for their leaders in Greece at that time, or would you have to look that up?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I have to be honest. All I can say, I know they were. I mean, they had democracy when they killed Socrates, and Socrates was not long after Democritus.
Right.
So
Okay, so I think this is the only rhyme. This is the only part of the song I'm going to share. But like, I think this is literally everything about this you would disagree with, or is probably wrong. Okay, all right, you're all right. Ready? Before there was democracy, okay, including the pronunciation, by the way. Okay. Before there was democracy, there was Democritus. He was wrong about a bunch of shit, but still the dad of science. Okay, so everything about that, you would agree he was wrong about a bunch of shit. Other than that,
yes,
we're not sure he came before democracy. He probably came after. That's not how you pronounce Democritus.
No.
And he was not the dad of science.
Yes.
Okay, so everything about that is wrong, but it's just too good to cut out. And it's a song, and it's fun, and the revisionism, I think, is part of what makes it funny, I guess. Okay, moving on. So Protagoras, he said the ends justify the means. Yeah,
I think he was the man is the measure guy, right?
I saw him and several others associated with a school that said the ends justify the means. Maybe that's something to look.
There's Gorgeous and what's the other guy's name? Starts with the TH. I always like that better. Yeah, I don't know. I have to refresh myself on that.
Was there a Greek who said the ends justify the means, like that was his thing?
Yeah, there was a sophist, a school of sophistry, and that was, I think, Gorgias is the main guy, Gorgias, and then what the hell is that other guy's name? Starts with a TH. I can't remember, but yeah, you can just look up the sophist, and yes, there were definitely people who believe might makes right, and that kind of thing. So
were the sophists before Socrates or around the same time?
Very interesting you bring that up. A lot of people considered Socrates a sophist at the time. Like he was just another guy. The sophists were just like, they didn't really care about ideas. They were just making arguments, and it was all about just what can you convince people to believe? Doesn't matter if it's true.
Okay. Gorgias was the guy's name? That's how you pronounce it? Gorgias?
Gorgeous, like
gorgeous.
Oh, you're beautiful. Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. It's pronounced like gorgeous, like the word.
I'm not certain of that. I think that's how it is.
All right. Well, I've got Protagoras credited for saying the ends justify the means, but let's both revisit this. So I might have to change it to Gorgias or Gorgeous. All right. So Plato was the first to build a system of philosophy. Okay. Yes. He said this world isn't real. There's a world of forms. Everything is perfect there. Okay, I'm glad I got those down. I would hate to have to, because that's essential. Did everyone think he was right?
Not. I mean, Aristotle obviously didn't, and he had his followers, so. No, but I would say Plato was more influential than Aristotle. I mean, they were contemporaries. Aristotle was a student, so.
I love how I'm going on record, like knowing that this is not 100% accurate. I could never. I mean, obviously, this is a fun song. This is not meant to be 1,000% accurate. So if I say everyone thought he was right, it's not exactly.
You give a disclaimer up front, then.
I'll put a disclaimer at the beginning. Say, I usually say all celebrity similarities are coincidental or parodic. Maybe I'll say all historical accuracies or something like that.
What do you say? This is games or something at the beginning of
This is jokes, not for
yeah,
kids.
this is jokes. Yeah,
That was at a time that I started putting those in videos when like some of my videos were when YouTube wasn't deleting everything I posted, they would mark it for 18 and up. And that slows down traffic, of course, especially in 2009. When like everyone's at their computer and like you didn't just have like your YouTube app where you're always signed in, like you're at your computer when you were watching YouTube typically. And who the hell wants to sign in? It takes you to a different window. It could slow down traffic a lot back then. And someone said, oh, I saw a video that, said, explicit, and it was not marked. That's logic. That was the intellectual caliber of me and my buddies back then. Like, oh, I saw a video that wasn't marked, and they did this. Therefore, if I do this, it won't be flagged. That was the level of brilliance. Just say something just so I know the audio is still connected.
Hi.
Okay, I don't hear you. Now I need
to
say something now.
Hello.
Okay, yeah, you were cut out. That's why I had a feeling the silence was more than speechlessness. Okay. So Aristotle, this I actually know from reading Aristotle's metaphysics or some of his metaphysics. He was challenging Plato in a major way, and he was disagreeing, and he was really shutting him down. Okay. Nobody listened to Aristotle. A bit of an exaggeration, but by and large, the culture weren't.
Yeah, I think you could. That's safe for poetic license.
Yeah. When people, so the Greeks, the Greeks being hedonistic, they were taking advice, and I say hedonistic, I mean like wrestling naked, which is, they were into various types of, sexuality and stuff. This wasn't necessarily coming from Epicurus. But he was a hedonist, at least the way he understood. Okay. Oh shit, hold on. Let me just. Okay. The skeptics said you can't know anything. That's pretty basic. All right. I asked you the other day in DMs about Philo bringing Plato to the Jews, which is what he did.
That's what this was about. Huh?
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily. So I was wondering if Philo created Christianity by bringing Plato into the Jewish world, or is that just too much of a dissertation that needs to be?
Yeah, as far as I know, Christians like Philo because he gave them a lot of allegorical excuses for things they believe. Like I said in the DM, the best influence I know is St. Augustine, transmitting Plato to Christianity.
Yeah, so I've got Augustine here, absolutely. All right, and then so Aristotle was discovered and translated by Al-Mamun. Whether or not Al-Mamun actually discovered him, he was the one who responsible for translating Aristotle and the other Greeks. Al-Ghazali reversed that and got rid of philosophy, or got rid of Aristotelian philosophy. And that's why Islam turned out so fun and full of life. All right. Aquinas learned of Aristotle largely from Maimonides, who in turn learned of Aristotle from Averroes, or is that a bit of a simplification?
Yeah, I'm not an expert. I don't know. I mean, I assume St. Thomas learned from Albert the Great. I don't know exactly the connection between Averroes and Maimonides and Albert the Great and Aquinas. I know they're all connected, but I don't know exactly the sequence.
Well, I've got it written down, so maybe it is. I've got it written down because I wrote it down, and I think you DM'd me. So
Yes, yeah.
if you can use yourself as a source from yesterday,
Okay.
you did. I mean, I can tell you what you said. Hold on, let me
Okay.
and tell me if I misunderstood. You said, of
I think I said he basically got Aristotle from Averroes and Maimonides.
yeah, that is okay. Averroes, an Aristotelian who influenced the greatest Jewish philosopher Maimonides, and he lived at the same time and influenced Aquinas. So I kind of got those three sort of in that order from you yesterday.
Yeah. I don't know the details, but I know they're connected in that way. So
All right. Well, all right. There you go. I mean, you know, again, this is not meant to be a definitive source of
you want to
information,
get
but
this all right, or else you'll
I don't, yeah, I don't want to lie. Like, I don't want any blatant misinformation. At the same time, some of this is bound to probably be a little bit revisionist, but you know, yeah. Okay. Some clergy were uneasy with the changes that were going on, I would imagine, as Aristotle was. I know, like, the thinkers were excited about Aristotle, yeah, but I would imagine some of the clergy might have been a little nervous,
Well,
or as the clergy and the intellectuals one and the same.
yeah, kind of. I mean, the church adopted Aristotle. That's why a lot of the intellectuals started to reject Aristotle even as they were accepting his methods, because the church appropriated him. They said, "Oh, Aristotle is the church's philosopher."
Yeah.
And people said, "Oh, I reject that dogma." Now, they were using Aristotle even as they were rejecting him, but no, I mean, Aristotle is like Catholicism's guy. Like, they love Aristotle.
And they had so you had intellectuals living in the 1300s and stuff who were not religious, and they were,
I'd say they were religious, but they didn't like the uh they wanted to separate the dogma of religion from science, and they said, okay, well, Aristotle is associated with the church, so if we're going to do science, I mean, that comes from Aquinas, who said, look, there are two different spheres here. You have religion over here, and then science is where we use reason. So, we don't have to use faith over here.
Okay. Nietzsche, he loved power and strength. You could say he inspired the Nazis to some degree.
Yeah.
He did give us a healthy love of superheroes, but he saw people in terms of masters and slaves, which is where his major error was. Is that all good?
Yeah, kind of. He interpreted, the kind of Christian worldview as, look, we were forced into being slave. It's basically like well, I didn't want to hang out with you anyway if you get rejected by somebody. It's like, look, we're slaves, so we're going to turn slavery into a virtue because that's what we were forced into. So he didn't like that. Yeah, he was definitely a German idealist type, in the sense that he believed in the will over reason. He was not a big fan of, Apollo versus Dionysus, right? He was much more of a, let's go with our emotions and our passions versus cold reasons. It was yeah, you would definitely. I mean, it's hard to say whether he personally would have approved of the Nazis, but his ideas of will over reason, like the Nazi blood and soil kind of idea. There's definite connection there.
Okay, I think that's all I have to run by you. I'm glad I got to go on record knowing that some of this is not entirely sound. So Yeah, that's always good. So someone out there can get upset with me for you know, lying to the world. But you know, it's just we're telling a story here.
This is jokes, right?
It's jokes and it's content and you know, and it's my understanding, even if it's my somewhat evasive understanding. I mean, so I mean, have you ever seen anything that I've done and thought like that's overboard, that's wrong, like you shouldn't say that, or like in the same way that you might look at modern art and say this is anti-life, this is disintegrating, you know, people.
Let me go to the bathroom. I'll be back in
Yeah,
1 second.
same here. I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Okay, cool. Hey.
Hey, one sec. I didn't want to eat over the mic, so I had myself muted. I was eating a protein bar. Are you a fitness guy at all? Do you exercise?
Yeah, I used to more. Now I am too overweight to I don't want to destroy my knees, but I still jog sometimes. Yeah, I used to be really into fitness and I hope to be really into it again.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if this is like it's too big of a question, but like, so you've gained weight. Like, where does how does a rational person let himself get there, or does a rational person not want to kick his own ass and really get his shit together, or does it fall within a hierarchy of like, well, but I am kicking my own ass in X, Y, and Z, so I can worry about weight another time or something. And also, I'm sending an email real quick, so I'm finishing a sentence here, so I'm gonna finish typing it. So maybe think about your answer, and people watching at home, why don't you think about how you would answer that as well?
Yeah. No. I no, it comes from I got depressed and very negative and dark at a certain time in my life a few years ago, and put on some weight. And I'm not sure what the right answer is now. Sometimes I think, well, hold off if you can't pay attention while you're doing your email.
No, I was gonna joke like, "Oh, sorry, I had you muted," just so like you're like taking all this. But yeah, I was saying like, hold off, let me finish.
Sure,
Let me
sure.
write
Okay,
this
yeah.
sentence. Um, yeah, I have a producer who he creates my music tracks and then he mixes the music. Excellent, excellent
Hmm.
stuff. But yeah, so when he emails me, I want to get back to him so we don't waste any time. Um, all right, I am here and my phone is away. All right, so you got depressed. How do you explain that? What does depression mean in your world?
Well, I don't know if that was, well, depression is when you just lose emotion in general. You just get dull because you don't think anything matters. I'd say I didn't start out depressed. I started out really angry, enraged. Still like that some ways. Um, but I just got angry at how the world was treating me, the uh, disparity between what I deserved and what I was getting from the world, what I was giving and what I was getting. And that came from working at a certain job and with certain people. And I got angry and depressed and didn't care about anything and put on a lot of weight. And now, you know, I still think about it. I don't know what the right thing to do is. Sometimes I think, well, I should get in shape so I can live as long as I can and do the work I care about. But then I think, well, the world is crumbling. So should I just do what I want? And who cares? I mean, even if I'm as unhealthy as I want to be, I'll live another 10 years. That'll be enough to do what I want. And I can't live without the hedonistic pleasures. I mean, it's short term, it definitely is, but there's no point in being long term when you're not allowed to be. This is why force makes people stupid. This is why, regulation ruins banking because it means you can't think or act long term. So you are forced to be dumber than you could be. So I think, well, the world, there's a lot of force in the world, and I can't do what I want, and I'm not necessarily going to be successful doing what I want. So, who the hell cares? Maybe I should just continue being unhealthy and do what I want. And who cares if I die at 40 or 50 or whatever? People do like that you challenge me on my pessimism and negativity. So
Yeah.
that's a good contrast between us. But yeah, I get pretty negative sometimes, and I don't know what the right answer is. So,
Well, it is great that you welcome scrutiny. You know, for someone, someone like you who is unapologetic when you criticize. It's great that you're not sensitive about it. That you're open to criticism. So that's why I say, you dish it out, but you are open to criticism as well.
exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean that's probably the main I think the main difference between us based on conversations we've had is I think I'm properly focused on what, what do I have to work with and what do I want to do with my life? And I think that's what objectivism advises, maybe not directly because objectivism is just a means
Yes.
of
Yes.
knowing, but in a country that is as free as this one, and with the toys we have to play with, and the people who I realize can be a little bit disappointing, but I like to think that the quality of people in my life has increased the more I've improved. So, and that's not to like rip on anyone I was hanging out with in my younger days, because
Mm.
many of them were remarkable. Okay, whatever. I'm going to just leave that one alone. I don't want to start saying these are the greatest people ever. No, I mean, some of the most talented people. Like I've always gravitated to talented, bright types. Definitely, we were like the future leaders of the world, me and my boys back in the day. But we were all stoners as well. We were all potheads. We had to be high all day, every day for life to even work, for life to even make sense, to be worth living. And as I've worked on what is required for me to stay sober, before you worry about career and romance, it's just once I realized I need to be clean, or it all goes in the trash. Then staying clean required improving everything else. And that's when objectivism even became more than just an idea. And the ethics, ethics is, among other things, a requirement for staying sober. It has been said, I mean, look, the reason that in the 12 steps there's making amends is one of them, is that the guilt of having something weigh on you will ultimately drive you back to the bottle. And I think objectivists should really like that. Oh, you mean that your ethical standing affects your psychology and affects your level of control over your behavior, like just that it's all integrated. I would think objectivists should be very much in approval of that. All things being considered, that the 12-step program is so Aristotelian compared to the rest of the culture we live in. But yeah, so for me, wanting to stay clean, which also means getting to keep my career, getting to keep my very cool skill and trade, it means not making any excuses. So no matter how messed up the world is never a reason to get lazy, get complacent. And I think Howard Rourke reflects that when you read The Fountainhead. Rourke never makes excuses. He never says, well, this my life is fucked, so I'm just going to let myself go. So yeah, the more, I'm rereading Atlas Shrugged now. And I just began with part 3. I read the first chapter of part 3, Atlantis. And yeah, it can be a little bit more, Atlas Shrugged compared to The Fountainhead can be a little bit more blurry in terms of like, when is it right to just give up? But they're not talking about giving up. First of all, it's art. Okay, this is my understanding of Atlas. Because it's art, I don't think Ayn Rand would ever tell anyone, you should stop doing what you want to do, your calling in life, give it up, walk away from it because the world doesn't deserve it. I think it's art. I think it's it's I don't know what it is. It's art. Maybe I'll just keep repeating it's art until it means something else. But yeah, I mean, in the world that we're living in, I would still say Howard Rourke is the example of what a rational person does. He doesn't waste any time thinking about evil any more than is required to defeat it or to avoid it. And he does what he can with what he has and maximizes his potential. So yeah, I guess all of that stuff comes to mind. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to pessimism or just even to judging people, look, I've been disappointed by many people, many times. Sometimes some people have disappointed me by not even disappointing me. They're just so boring and unremarkable from what, or it seemed that way from my experience, that I was disappointed that there wasn't even anything exciting coming out of them. I've been disappointed many times. However, there's still a lot to gain from many people, and also the more I focus on what I can control, the more I focus on my own work and my own self-improvement, the less other people's shortcomings seem to matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, the less relevant it is, and the more potential value other people suddenly seem to have, now that I'm not relying on them to give me meaning, I guess, not relying on them for inspiration. So yeah, but like I said at the beginning of this, the quality of people has increased. So the people in my life today are more in line with those values of being productive and being sort of life affirming people, life loving people, as opposed to being a bunch of complacent stoners, which is the type of people. I mean, look, a few short years ago, anyone who didn't smoke pot was just had nothing to offer me. I couldn't understand, how can I hang out with someone that doesn't smoke weed? Like, what do they do? Today it's the opposite. Someone who does smoke pot, I just find to be so boring. Like, maybe if they smoke it once in a while and I'm never near it, I can sort of put it aside. But if they're like one of these people that just needs to be high all the time, oh, it's worse than boring. It's like it is depressing. It's like watching a dead person, an undead zombie, So anyway, yeah, pessimism. So anyway, did anything I say just now, is there anything you disagree with? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, the only thing is, I don't know if we're in Howard Rourke's world. Peikoff has said that we're not in Rourke's world anymore, and it's just hard for me to know where to draw the line. Like, okay, when is it appropriate for me to do this or do that because the world doesn't care? The world doesn't respect my rights or whatever. We live in a very corrupt, gray world, and it's hard to know what to do. So I don't know. I mean, if the world is doomed and I'm going to be in a concentration camp in 30 years, then thinking long term is a mistake, and I should just, it would be ridiculous. What, I'm going to be healthy so that I can live to be 70 in a concentration camp or get killed a year after I get put in there? That's ridiculous. So it's just a judgment call. How bad do you think the world is? And I go back and forth on that.
I mean, it's hard to predict the future. I mean, what did Peikoff say? We're not in Howard Rourke's world anymore. What did he say? What is that? Those his exact words? And why did he say
I can't
it?
remember, but
and are you sure you agree? I mean, Peikoff can be wrong, of course. Like,
yeah, no, he can.
I mean, I think Peikoff's predictions for the future could very well have been wrong. In that, it's hard to estimate where we're going because the positive stuff about our culture might have a much more impactful effect than the negative.
Yeah, but the positive things are all vestigial. Like, it's technology, it's It's just things on the fumes of the past. What new? Is there any upsurge in good stuff? All of the news, the trends are bad, is what I'm saying.
All of them? I mean, what about like
What's
Harry
good?
Potter? What about Harry Potter? You know, this
I haven't read
excited.
it, but
Well, me either. I just know it's not cynical. It's just this happy, like fantastic story about young at heart, young souls doing the impossible. And
yeah.
this is the most popular franchise ever, right? This is like a generation of people 25 and under today all grew up with Harry Potter.
Well, one, J.K. Rowling herself seems awful. Also, my girlfriend does know Harry Potter. She says it's not romantic, although she likes the books, but it's not romantic in terms of literary style, so that's not good. Um, uh, I don't know. I mean, all I know about Harry Potter is I went to see the last movie. What is it? Is Deathly Hallows the last one? Deathly
I
Hallows
haven't.
Part Two.
I know none.
Whatever the last one is, I went to see. It's in two parts in movies, and I saw
Mhm.
the second part only. That's all I've seen is the very end of Harry Potter, and I only went because I was in love with this girl, and I wanted to go with her to do anything. So I went to see
She the
that.
girl. She the girl you're with now.
No,
Oh,
well, I'm not with anyone now. We broke up. But,
oh, I'm sorry. That's too bad.
hmm.
Yeah, you'll find the right one. But okay. So
Yeah, no, I don't
Harry
know.
Potter. Yeah.
I don't know enough about Harry Potter to say whether that's a good or bad sign of
Hmm.
the culture.
Okay, all right. It's not written. It's not romance. It's not written by Victor Hugo, but it's a positive. You know, the Dark Ages would not produce something like Harry Potter, right? Even though it's
Yeah,
got magic and all that stuff, they were not interested in the happy side of magic. They were interested in the miserable,
right.
uncontrollable side of it, of their
Christians
life.
today still call it like witchcraft, right? Like they
But
hate it.
yeah, but how there was not much of a pushback against Harry Potter, was
No,
there?
that's I'm saying that
Yeah.
on your side. Like
Right, right.
Christians,
So, I
Christians still
mean,
hate it.
it sounds like you're being a little dismissive of Harry Potter. I think that's
I
a
just don't know anything about it, and what I do know, it's not. I don't know if I take that as like a sign of something new and good in the culture. It seems like it's a sign of the remaining good that is on the way out. That's my concern.
oh, well, and everything around us is just the remaining good from the past, right? Like everything good about America today is left over, right? We're not today's America could never come up with the country we have
Right, but
or the
that's my
culture.
point. If there's no new good, like
Hmm.
there's nothing stable, right? Like you're
Look,
good or you're
listen.
bad. You're moving in one direction or the other. There's no stability there. You move toward the extreme. So we're moving toward good or we're moving toward bad. If there's no good trend, we're moving toward the bad. Like a mixed economy is not stable.
Well,
Mixed culture is not stable.
the good about today is that you have these positive franchises like Pokemon and Harry Potter, and that people are excited about something life affirming. Also, the you mentioned technology. It's not only that we have cool new toys; it's that people spend day in and day out developing these things. So it's like we're living in the Industrial Revolution. I would say instead of a cotton gin, we've got a computer full of coding. But yeah, I think there's a lot of positive things happening. And by the way, how do we determine what's a relevant cultural product? We have Ayn Rand's work being read, in recent years being read at record-breaking numbers, whether or not everyone agrees with what she wrote. I mean, the fact that people are reading this inspiring stuff suggests that something positive could be happening. I would, you know, I'm a adherent of Rand. I agree with her. I'm creating something that I consider very positive and life affirming, and it's getting many millions of views. And yeah, someone could look at it and just say, "Oh, this is just cynicism and nihilism," and but still, it's like How do you decide what counts and what doesn't? You know, why are you and me having this conversation not being counted as a sign of something positive?
I think we do count, but how many people are like us? Like Ayn Rand is a new sign. Ayn Rand is a sign of an upsurge. How
Hmm.
much is influenced by Ayn Rand? No one. Almost
Uh,
nothing.
what do you mean? There's so much reason to think. What about how? Okay, how do you measure who's being influenced by Rand? Like maybe the fact that someone like Jordan Peterson is so popular, and the reason he's popular, I mean, he got popular for sticking up for free speech in Canada, which is a good sign. But then he's also, in addition to all of his nonsense, he is telling people to get their life together. I mean, can't you benefit from Peterson's message if you're putting on weight and stuff? Like, couldn't you you use a reminder to clean your room?
Yeah, I mean, cleaning your room is really important. And
Is that sarcastic or do you
no,
mean
no,
it?
no, it is.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it
okay.
definitely. But I heard
Yeah, yeah.
about that. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
been
but
pointed out by Peterson.
the popularity of someone like Peterson and all these
Yeah.
people.
Okay. So getting away from me, like I
Okay.
wouldn't. I don't get anything out of Peterson that I
Okay.
haven't gotten from somebody else. But yeah, people could get things out of Peterson that are valuable if they haven't seen other better things. Um, it's just a question to me of whether the people getting good things out of Peterson are motivated by essentially good qualities or will be influenced by Peterson in an essentially good way. And I think most people who are attracted to Peterson are essentially mystics, and the people who let him influence them, he's essentially a mystic. So they're going to be getting essentially negative influence. Uh, I just don't see the trends, the original trends that are good. There are good things happening, uh, but they're not new. They're just the fumes of the past, and I think they're. I mean, there has to be something new keeping them afloat or keeping them going. And the only new things I see are the alt right and social justice and what Sargon's liberalist thing, which is doomed. I mean, there's nothing, no new thing is good. So,
Well, the fact that we have psychologists even helping people improve their lives when just a half century ago, right? You went to a psychologist if you were crazy, right? You didn't have people saying,
yeah.
I'm more or less okay, but I want to do better. So there are positive changes, aren't there? Or the fact that like I said, the fact we've got Silicon Valley, that this excitement to create, this excitement to expand. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you're giving the good signs the just attention that it deserves, just as we can, just as the negative ought to get its attention.
What do you think Silicon Valley comes from, though? Is that from a new trend or is that from the past that's dying out? Or because it's not just what exists here right now,
Hmm.
it's what does this signify for the future?
Well,
And if it's
couldn't
a
you?
dying trend, it's good for now, but it's not going to last. If you think there are certain upsurges, I
Mhm.
don't see them, but if you know them, I'd be happy to hear them.
Well, I'm trying to. So you're looking for an intellectual sign of good times ahead. Okay, well, I would say, maybe in theory, the popularity of something like Harry Potter, maybe these are people who would be more open to someone like Rand, in the same way that my fans, a handful of them, and people on average every once or twice a day, I get an email or a message from somebody saying they're reading Rand because of me. So, okay,
It's
I mean,
good.
without complicating things, we got, you know, entertainer, loves Rand, entertains, doesn't dilute the water with entertainment, does it uncompromisingly, then one day starts talking about Rand. A generation of people that grew up watching said entertainer hears that Rand is a big part of his life, and without cynicism, give it a shot. And chances are many of them will ultimately reject Rand, as people tend to do. But it just seems like if we're gonna constantly expect only the best, we'll never be optimistic, or we'll never. I mean, it'd be like, if it'd be like, we were talking about Aquinas and Aristotle. I mean, if we were to just look at that century or that time period, or even that cluster of time, those several centuries, we would say the world was never going to get better or something. And you would say, yeah, but he was only getting the stuff from Greece, it was from the past. It was burning out. It was good. It's going to burn out eventually, and I guess eventually it did. But yeah,
the point there is just that it took 1,000 years.
And if you were living in Aquinas's time, would you want to waste your life saying it's not going to be perfect in my lifetime, or would you want to say, I'm here now, I'm going to do what I can?
No, I'm going to get what I can out of life, but I see myself as just snatching what I can out of this collapsing structure. I don't see it like, okay, this has integrity and we're going to keep building. No, this is falling apart and I'm going to get what I can, and that's it.
Okay. When you mentioned the possibility of being in a concentration camp in 30 years, was that a real possibility in your mind, or was that? I don't think I wouldn't worry about that. No, I think
it happens fast,
Yeah, but it hasn't happened here.
The Jews, like there were Jews in Weimar Republic who were like, "Oh, you're ridiculous. That's not. What are you talking about? That's not going to happen."
But America's different. Germany went through many fast changes in a short amount of time. America, it's like no matter how much the intellectuals try to have their way, the Americans just won't fucking listen at the same rate.
They reelected Obama. That was my turning point. I thought, okay, if they can do that, there is no.
Yeah, but that's politics. Okay, you're saying, well, concentration camps are.
I mean, yeah, right. Yeah.
I just, yeah, as bad as, look, I hate politically, it's worse than it's ever been, but I think culturally,
it's worse than it's ever been. I mean, this.
Yeah.
I mean, like just like internet culture and the comedians you see and all these people, it's just so ugly and depraved. It's awful. Like you would not even the worst time. This is what Kant did. Kant made nihilism a not long-term, but a longer-term prospect. You can actually have a few hundred years of nihilism now. In the past, when it was, when it evolved into skepticism, it just collapsed and something else took over. But Kant made it so that, okay, now we can have a system of nihilism. This culture has never existed before. Nothing this depraved has ever existed. Even if you lived in the Dark Ages and it was disgusting and ugly and politically and so even worse, like, you're in the Inquisition or whatever. But in terms of just self-abasement, self-abnegation, self-destruction, there's nothing as ugly as today, ever. It's just, I don't know. I can't, thank God we live in a technological time that we have the things of the past, because who could survive off of what's produced today artistically?
Well, I mean, look, I don't know. What about internet culture is so bad? Like, I think there's a lot of funny stuff. Like, really, it's not Renaissance paintings, but it's funny and it gets right to the point. And it's, I don't know, like, in some ways, I see it as a perfection of the craft of comedy, rather than having to get on stage and work the audience. Here, they just go, let's get right to the point. And I don't know. I watch memes, these meme compilations and stuff. I don't know. To me, it cheers me up.
There are things I definitely find funny today, but what is most popular, I think, is not funny. And
what is most popular?
Anything you find on Reddit, like these stupid. Everything on Reddit is like, it's like that Fountainhead idea where she talks about like two mirrors. stood against each other, and it's just this infinity. Like you see the mirror reflected in the mirror, and the mirror, and it just goes on forever. It's just this pointless paradox. Everything on Reddit is like that. You know Hitchens' razor. You know Christopher Hitchens, and he says any idea that can be accepted without justification can be rejected without justification or evidence or whatever it was. What's people's immediate reaction to that, do you think?
On Reddit, probably great. That means we get to reject a bunch of stuff. No,
Oh, no.
So what?
Let's apply Hitchens' razor to Hitchens' razor. If Hitchens' razor can be promoted without that, let's just reject that. It's this undercutting. It's this worship of paradox, and it's this worship of like the like the Eastern Zen koans. People love paradoxes. People love logical contradictions. Like that's the most emphatically approved of, applauded thing today. That's what's always most upvoted on Reddit. If you go on Reddit, any topic, the most upvoted comment will be the most contradictory, dumb, obvious thing possible. I hate that. I think it is objectively indicative of a nihilistic culture. I hate it. And it's
listen,
worship of paradox and contradiction.
So I hate Reddit. Like I've always hated Reddit. I've told you I think I hate Reddit. I don't know why you're spending any time on Reddit. And you're probably going to say, well, as a social commentator, I need to know what's being said. But is that right? Is that your reason? Or
kind of, but I haven't been on Reddit in 6 months.
Good. Okay. I haven't gone on, I think, since I went on Rubin. Like I don't need to see what anyone is saying about that. I don't need to know which snarky.
But you can ignore it. But isn't that the mainstream?
No, it's one. No? It's one fraction of people. I don't know anyone personally. I don't think. Listen, like, do you think everyone you meet in the street spends their time on Reddit? These are the bottom 5% of the world. These are. I mean, I don't. I mean, maybe 5% is a frivolous number, but hold on. I'm just adjusting something at my end because the audio was glitching again.
Sure.
Hold on a second. It's acting weird. Okay. OBS is acting weird, but hopefully it'll come back up in a second. Anyway, and you're recording this at your end.
Yeah, this will be fine. Yeah.
Look, I hate Reddit. I don't like it. I don't go on it. I guess there's some benefit to it, but like, I don't know why you think this is like everyone is on it. These are people that never leave the house. These are people that are cynical, and it's like Encyclopedia Dramatica in long form. It's just everyone's a faggot or a kike or a nigger. There's like no, and that's fun. That's fun as like a joke, but like there's no values, right? That's what defines Reddit to me. Generation Reddit, I call them. And I know, now it sounds like I'm saying that it's the generation. Look, listen, I'm trying to talk you off this ledge that I sometimes find myself on, but nonetheless, yeah, so just don't go on Reddit. No, I'm not like, I meet people that haven't heard of Reddit. Like, I don't know, like, and the people the influencers, the real influencers, the intellectuals, I guess, or just the entertainers, the artists, I guess, maybe bad example in today's age, but I don't know, like, or even the artists, even though you say most of them are making crap art, but nonetheless, they're not on Reddit, you know? The film directors, the college professors, even a lot of young people they're just not on Reddit. Like I think Reddit is mainly like college age and older, maybe some teenagers, but I can't imagine very many like 13-year-olds are hanging out on Reddit just watching a bunch of stuffy neckbeards, insult everything. Am I wrong?
You said the lowest 5%, right? So
a bit of a gratuitous thing I said,
sure.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. No, I won't hold you to that, but it's just useful as contrast to what I think, which is that it's the highest 5%. Like that's what's so depressing about it. Like, the people on Reddit are the most intellectual of the normal people. Like, you think yeah, most people are not on Reddit, but that's because most people are not intellectual. They are influenced by Reddit. Like, that's the transmission belt. Yeah, that's the reason the United States has survived for so long, because the dumb, idiot, non-intellectual masses have a better worldview than the intellectuals. But it's been turned into anti-intellectualism versus intellectualism. So we are relying on the morons to save us, and the morons cannot save us in the long run because intellectuals rule the world. Like, and it just, every generation it penetrates more and more into the culture, especially with the government emphasizing as hard as it possibly can more people going into college, more and more and more subsidies, everybody going to college. This is part of why I'm so against college. But no, I mean, Reddit is the top. Reddit is the pinnacle of your average intellectual, which is why I'm so depressed. I mean, I go on our games, right? And I get so depressed at how dumb people are. And then I realize, oh, wait, our games is the pinnacle here. Our gaming, that's where the normies go. And they are 100 times dumber and more numerous. And it's just depressing. Like, they're, I don't know. I don't see I don't see where the saviors of the world are. They don't exist.
Well,
Everybody is
be the
awful.
savior. Well, be the savior then. What?
Who listens? I mean, you have a bigger audience than I do, but almost nobody listens to me, and most people who listen to me are just morons who happen to listen to me who would listen to anybody. I mean, it's been
Great.
very depressing. That
You don't know who's watching. You don't know. You can't say that with certainty. You can't just, you've seen the internet comments. It's amazing. It's like, you should know better than to say this, to talk about who's watching you on the YouTube. You should know that the people who comment are always the annoying, unhappy people. You know,
do you think that's something I don't know? Do you think the people who comment, like, you could extrapolate the percentage from there? Or do you think that the people who don't comment are just different from the people who do? There's a big difference between commenters and non-commenters.
There is a difference.
Okay.
People who comment are a certain type, and people who comment negatively are a certain type of person.
Okay.
And look, your channel is budding, but it's small, and as you know, it's a small handful of people who change the world. Look, and like you said, the intellectuals rule the world. Yeah, but of those intellectuals, a small handful influence the others. Most of these idiots on Reddit, they get their opinions from someone. And I don't consider Sargon an idiot. I don't want to be an asshole to someone I consider a friend, but Sargon would respect Rand if other people told him that she's respectable. And you know this, of course. And by the way, you went on into the world of YouTube with a chip on your shoulder. Your earliest videos, you're already talking about how this is a hostile world to you. Why are you even saying that? Like, why are you even thinking that? This world is your playground. You should, if you're saying where are the saviors? Be the savior. You know, be the guy. Act like it. Just be. You know, own these people. Tell them why they're wrong. You know, I don't know. Like, obviously, do what you're doing, but do it with the without the pessimism and without the cynicism. Really, you have something that I don't. Like, you have the philosophical integration and the raw talent for understanding and explaining ideas. There's no reason you can't be. I don't know. Okay, so, like, have you thought about investing in communication skills, such as going to Toastmasters or anything like that? Working on speaking, working on communication.
This is good. There are a lot of I want to bring up the controversial things that I believe, so it'll attract people. Um,
Well, you lost me there. What do you mean?
no. Just one controversial thing I believe is that I am totally against the genocide on ums. You know, like people say, "Oh, you have to eliminate that." No, wait, what are you rolling your eyes about? Come on.
It's a bad habit.
No, it's not. What's wrong with it?
Because confident people are able to speak without saying like, it's difficult to listen to someone who does that constantly, which is why I'm part of this genocide.
There's a difference between using it validly and using it as a handicap. There are definitely things people use as a comfort phrase. They just say it constantly and way too much, but that doesn't mean it has no legitimate purpose. Inevitably, because you're speaking from your subconscious, you don't know what you're going to say next. So you have a choice. Give an anchor that says, I'm not done yet. Here's a noise that signifies that. Or you just stay silent. Now people say, oh, stay silent, because that nobody will know. That's totally second-handed. Like,
okay,
that implies the wrong thing. They say, oh, well, nobody's going to know that you messed up. They're going to think it's an emphasis. But if it's not, okay, so then you're emphasizing something you didn't intend to emphasize by staying silent, so that you can seem like you didn't, so that you can seem like this mystical, omniscient force that knew everything it was going to say. That's ridiculous.
No, so you can seem like somebody who is a good speaker. And listen, by the way, you're a good speaker. I didn't bring up Toastmasters because I hear you say a lot. That's a big reason I'm into speaking, improving my speaking skills. But what you get from Toastmasters and other, having a speaking coach or having any sort of exercise in that coaching is it gets you up on your feet. It gets you projecting sounds. It gets you improving. It gets you working on something. It gets you in a room with people face to face who are supporting you and who you are supporting in return. And it eliminates this dark view of people that like they're all just fundamentally opposed to you. And it's a healthy exercise. It's just, how you're frustrated with like ARI. Like I find myself frustrated with needing to like talk you into like just focusing on the positive and just like, I don't know, doing the best you can. And like I get you are doing a great job with like building your your YouTube channel, your podcast, whatever else you're doing with your time. But like if I listen to your earliest work, your earliest videos, you're much better now than you were back then. If I would have tapped you on the shoulder back then and said, hey, don't have such a chip on your shoulder, you're going to get better and you're going to be less negative and you're going to, be more confident. You might have argued with me back then and said, hey, well, what are you on? What is this, a genocide on my speaking skills? It's just like, no, it's about, we're not infallible, right? We have stuff we need to work on. We have stuff we need. The first step is to acknowledge that there's room for improvement. So I don't know if any of that made sense, but yeah.
Well, I have to violate the norms and say that no, it didn't, because there's a difference between. Look, it's not that when I started, I thought I was the best I could be. That's not what I have a problem with. It's that I don't think people are good enough to recognize value. I don't think I'll get what I deserve. I don't think any good person will get what he deserves. So, yeah, you can't really. Do you really think that there's no legitimate use for us? You think you should just stay silent, never utter that kind? I mean, Ayn Rand did it in conversation. She talked about. She would say, well. I mean, it's just. I mean, not to use that as an appeal to authority, but it's just when you find something ineradicable like that, like you should stop to think, maybe there's some functional purpose to this. And the purpose is, hey, I'm not done speaking, but I don't know what I'm going to say yet. And to say, well, you should just stay silent, even though that makes it seem like an emphasis. When you don't intend an emphasis, that's bad. I don't say every is legitimate. There are definitely people say, do it way too much. It can definitely become a crutch. But
I think you're focusing on non-essentials here. If
okay,
you want to say your ums, you're welcome to say them as much
okay.
as you want. You can still benefit from deciding I'm going to be the firebrand and everyone's going to know it because I'm going to reach my maximum potential. So it's not enough to just be
Okay, but
philosophically sound.
there's a difference between being the best I can be and thinking that's going to succeed or change the world. I'm focused on doing the best I can do. But that doesn't mean I think, okay, well, that means I'm going to change the world and everybody's rational. I live in a factual context. There's only so much I can do. I can't
I
just
don't know. How do you know? How do you know? Why are you assuming the world is as bad as you think it is? You don't know. I mean, how many good people need to show up for you to change your mind about the culture? And why are you assuming they're not going to surprise you as you get yourself out there?
It's an arbitrary assumption as far as I can tell. I don't know. Everybody good seems bad. I mean, or rather, there don't seem to be any good people.
I mean, am I not a good person?
Yes, but you're rare. I say no. I mean, there are very few.
What do you like about me?
I told you this before.
Yeah. No, I want. I mean, specifically, is it? I know you told me once that I have capacity for reverence. I thought that was a very
Yes.
thing. So you don't see that in many people.
No, that's almost non-existent.
Well,
You
what
must
if?
see that yourself.
I mean, I've noticed it increasingly more, but it also gave me something to look out for. Now, like my friend Drew.
Yeah.
I shouldn't call him by his Christian name, but whatever. Yeah, very thoughtful guy. I don't know if reverence is the word I would use to describe him, but he's not cynical, and he doesn't equate himself with everyone. Like he doesn't knock down people's achievements as though he could have done. Very, very, very positive person. I only met him because I went to a party where I knew almost nobody. Do you think you would have gone to that party? And if the answer is no, you would not have met somebody who would have surprised you. And listen, people are fuel, right? I mean, that's why we're talking right now, because exchanging these values, exchanging ideas with somebody who shares these values is encouraging. The day after I did the panel with Sargon, I went to go see Aladdin with Big E, my man, Big E, the big bald guy. He's a very
he was really good, by the way. I saw that video. He was
So another person you never would have known existed, if not for certain steps you've taken which are antithetical to your pessimism, as well as me taking steps which are antithetical to pessimism, and a bunch of people leaving their comfort zone and going against their negative thinking. So he's been instrumental in my staying sane, in my staying optimistic in life, and just remembering that like there's good people around. And so I was very, very glad he was able to join me in London. And he and I went to go see Aladdin again. Yes, I know the 90s are hardly a renaissance, but that movie is just, to me, very life affirming. And I was sitting there. I was thinking to myself, when I was a kid, I wanted to be the genie. A lot of people wanted to be Aladdin. I thought the genie had he can do anything, and he could just go poof, and all these cool stuff happens. That to me is like, imagine being a genie. And it's funny at the end, the genie is free, but everyone else is still a slave. Everyone else still lives under the Sultan. And Aladdin is he's given the happy ending. He's made a prince. He's allowed to join the aristocracy or whatever. Like he's allowed to be a ruler. But nonetheless, as I was sitting there preparing for the show to begin, I was telling E, I said, I told him, it's like it's hard, like getting out there and speaking my truth and speaking about Ayn Rand to an audience, and to an audience watching over the internet who is just so quick to dismiss it. And it's hard. Like in my finer moments, I don't even think about it. But at times, like, sort of doubt hits me. Not doubt that what I'm saying is true, but doubt that, like, is there a point in saying it? And he was like, yeah, but like, it is true, and you enjoy doing what you're doing, and this is your world, and you're fighting for it. And I told him, I said, it's like really useful having you here, like, to like, as like a concrete external reflection of these
Yes.
values. And I said, like, in one of the weirdest emotional moments ever, I said, it would be so much easier if Ayn Rand were still here. And he said, yes, but she was here. She did exist. She was real, and you're able to do your best to keep it going. And he often reminds me, whenever I voice any doubt, he reminds me that it is all in my head. Not that what's wrong with the world is all in my head, because there's a lot wrong with the world, but any limitations on me are just my own choice to focus on what's wrong, because there's nothing physically stopping me from reaching my maximum potential. I mean, some things arguably, but nothing that's significant. And so what I get from a friend like him, what I get from circles where people are ambitious people, lively people, concerts, shows, whatever it is these values that I look for, even if many of these people are not the most intellectual. But I get a reflection of these values. And yeah, there's just like letting the cynical, these Reddit types, or these negative people, the cynics, letting them stop me, even function as a speed bump, is just an injustice, isn't it? It's just it's immoral, isn't it? So I don't know. I think self-improvement is, and self-improvement, including in wanting to perfect my skill. And these days, improving my speaking is kind of an additional skill that I've taken on, which, I think you and I both could benefit from. So like, in your case, it's not that I think you need to be a better speaker, because I think you're naturally gifted in that. I think it's your attitude that could benefit from being around other speakers, or from getting yourself in front of a live audience at some point, or whatever it is. So that's why I brought up Toastmasters. It wasn't per se that there's anything wrong with your communication. It was really that being around people, it kind of, pardon the phrase, gets you out of your head. It gives you kind of a glimpse of just how much potential there is, and just what a fertile place the world is. So yeah, hopefully that was somewhat of a Oscar-winning speech right there. There's maybe the music should have started to play as I was. But yeah, that's my opinion. That's what I have to say. You told me that I am unusually capable of reverence.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big part of that is wanting for myself, wanting things and believing it is possible. And so recognizing that other people have worked for it and attained it. So also rare is the capacity for wanting self-improvement, the capacity for fearlessly, or maybe fearlessly is a weird word, but despite fear, pushing one out of their comfort zone. That's something you see in the world of sobriety. Again, not the most intellectual world, but if the value is independently taking on a challenge and pushing oneself out of their comfort zone, that's definitely something I've been fortunate to be around and to enjoy. So yeah, I think there's something there. I think I'm right about this. And again, it's not about the word and it's not about the world being overwhelmingly positive right now necessarily. It's just about, you have a gift, you have a very high level of knowledge and skill in philosophy. And I can't debate Sam Harris yet. I hope to someday. Maybe I can debate him. Maybe I could still, ask him things he's not used to answering. But I mean, you can debate anyone. Like you can shut down just about anyone, and the only reason, the only thing holding you back is just your own pessimism, I think. So anyway, that's I think self-improvement is a way of life. It requires just like life is a process of constantly feeding yourself and regenerating, I guess. Self-improvement is a continuous process of moving out of your comfort zone, a continuous process of challenging yourself, of going against what you perceived as being, the desirable place to go. So anyway, there's my spiel. Hope you decide you agree with me. Hope people watching maybe were inspired to do something outside of their comfort zone. And as you know, intellectuals are not known for being receptive, right? Like, and you're an intellectual, so even though you have all the right ideas, in the world of sobriety, engineers are the most difficult people to get on board. It's
Really?
It's impossible. They're so smart. They're so engaged with the real world that telling them you have a problem you're not currently aware of, it's just impossible to convince them. Why should they take that from anyone else? So, I mean, you do give off a little bit of this, like you have a force field around you. Like I can't penetrate the force field, and that's a shame, because your intellect and your level of integration with the utmost drive for challenging yourself in ways you never thought to challenge yourself would make you just absolutely unstoppable. And you would be that among other things, you would be that objectivist that you're saying today's objectivists are not. You would be the that firebrand that you fancy yourself now, and I consider you to be, but you would be you would stand like a firebrand. You would talk like a firebrand. You would laugh like a firebrand. Nothing like you'd be the closest thing to a superhero that we have here in this timeline.
So what do you think I'm not doing? What should I do more? What should I do different? As far as I can tell, I'm just recognizing reality for the, dark place it is. And I'm still doing what I think I should do to get what I can out of life. I don't know what you think I should be doing differently.
If I was a life coach or something, and in a way I am,
Sure.
if you said, tell me what to do, just whether it makes sense or not, I'll do it. I would say, get in physical shape.
Okay.
Join Toastmasters, whether you think you need it or not. I'm not saying you need speaking skill. Yes, you can use it, but it's not. It's also about getting face to face with people and choosing what to talk about and learning to talk about something that's not objectivism, and just learning and just being in continuous. Here's my main point about Toastmasters: being in continuous contact with positive people is healthy. That's why I brought up, going to see Aladdin with my friend E and stuff like that, because being in face to face and being in contact with the right types of people is it's fuel, right? It's fuel. And that's important in and of its own. So the types of people who go to Toastmasters, I'm not saying they're all saints, but they are the types of people who they want to have high energy, and they want to get a promotion at work, and they want to project confidence, and they want to be confident. So that's the type of people that a pessimist could use. even if the world is fucked, there's no reason to even acknowledge that fact. I mean, there's no reason to. It's like, listen, the world was fucked when we found it, right? I don't just mean you and me. I mean when mankind first came about, the world was already fucked, and he said, I'll tell you when we're fucked. I'll be calling the shots. So that's what I'm saying, really. So that's if I could get you to do what I was telling you, I would say physical fitness, Toastmasters, keep making continuous content. Yeah, other than that, I mean, that's a lot right there. I think beyond that, you would find other areas of interest. And make friends. Make friends. I don't know how many you have or if you have any, but look for people to hang around with and make plans. And if you don't like them, you don't have to hang out with them again, but look for them. So that would be my advice. And yeah, I think that would be my homework if I was in charge of you.
Well, I appreciate it. That's it's helpful advice.
No,
I have, despite my pessimism, been working on things. I've put up a podcast every Monday for over a year.
yeah.
So, I do look for people that I like. It's hard to find those people, but yeah, it's just it's a length of time thing, as far as I can tell. Like health matters because of a specific time span you expect to live in. And if you expect to live in less than that because of the culture around you, which is a factual question, your priorities change.
I'm not concerned about you dying young from being overweight. I'm concerned with you pushing yourself constantly, with you.
Okay.
I want you constantly working up a sweat when you'd rather be eating potato chips on the couch. And I want you to get that rush from exercise, where suddenly all that's wrong with the world clears away and you are thinking about what you're going to say on your next podcast. So, yeah, by the way, I'm giving you the blueprints to be able to someday quit your job. I'm giving you the blueprints to someday move away from Alabama, if that's where you are. Alabama, Georgia, pardon me. To travel, to meet whatever people are worth meeting. I mean, yeah, there's just so much that's possible while we're alive. And I mean, I think the plan I've laid out right there is the best way. So yeah, I mean, when I say get in physical shape, I'm not saying I want since you're going to live till you're 95, you need to get in shape now. I'm saying I need you constantly on that elliptical.
Mm. Yeah, well, I am getting back in shape. I'm losing weight, so we'll see how that goes.
Cool.
So let's get to controversial stuff.
Yeah. You got something?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Have you noticed how bizarrely talkative and inquisitive Indians are? Like Eastern Indians. Like Stefano, he must be an Indian. Like they ask constant questions, a million questions, and they ask them in the most insulting terms. I had some Indian just ask me, it was like, oh, is it true that objectivism is dogmatic or whatever? And I was like, what are you talking about? Nobody would ever ask this in the West and like expecting this to be a polite thing. This is absurd. And this is just something I've noticed about, I mean, I'm not racist. It's something about Indian culture. there's something, and it's an interesting question to me. I haven't figured out yet, but there's some cultural influence in India clearly that uh, promotes being highly inquisitive and not caring about uh, social propriety.
Yeah, I definitely I know Stefano. He's asked me a million questions at once, and I'm glad he's bothering you instead of me for a change. But so okay, so yeah, definitely that type of behavior I think is definitely cultural, right?
Yeah.
But let me ask you this. So I remember I said to Sargon, like, hey, so like Asians are tend to not be as good at drivers as maybe like others. And I mean, you made a video responding to
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
theory,
Yeah.
and you said, "Oh no, that's
Yes.
not inherent." So,
Hmm.
do you not think that certain types of coordination and, um, yeah, I mean, like coordination and certain rhythm and stuff like that, it can be genetic? Just as person to person, people have different natural gifts and natural sort of dispositions. So too, maybe a race of people might differ in their
It could be. I just don't. I mean, you can't rule it out philosophically, but
Mhm.
uh, I don't know. I don't think we have the cultural context to tell if that's uh, cultural or genetic. Can't say it's not genetic, but I think it's jumping the gun to say that it is genetic based on like we don't have the isolation of variables yet, in my view, to draw a cause and effect relationship.
And so you said in your video that you love the Jews. Like you
Yes.
would, if you could go to a do you mean the race of people? Do you mean Orthodox Jews? What do you mean by Jews?
What I mean is just that clearly throughout history, Jews have been, for cultural reasons, I believe, the
Yeah.
most intelligent and intellectual. Ayn Rand was Jewish. I mean, when you see people on stage today, who was it? Sam Harris, Brett Weinstein, another Jew. Like, it's so often I hear myself listening to intellectuals. I think, oh, wait a minute. Every one of these people on stage is Jewish. And that's why I hate the Nazis so much. It's not even out of, concern for the Holocaust. It's like,
It's just
I selfishly care. What the hell? You killed all these brilliant people. Like, you know how few Jews there are on Earth? I think they're like, what, 13 million or something out of 7 billion? There's so small a number. It's like a city's worth of Jews.
and you don't think any of that's genetic? Like you don't think the
It's not
Jews
impossible,
are
but I'm
very
skeptical.
cerebral, like the fact that blacks are so much more athletic than Jews, and Jews are so much more into these intellectual stuff than blacks. You don't think any of that is just from birth?
Well, uh, the culture integrates with that. Now, you could say
Hmm.
that's the genes causing the culture.
Yeah.
Um, that's not clear to me. I don't know which way it goes. I'm just generally skeptical of uh, genetic causes. I can't rule it out philosophically. It could be that Jews have a better starting place. I mean, I still believe free will would make the
Of course.
difference, but
So of course, I mean, free will is what makes all the difference. Like, and when I talk to these race realists, whatever. I mean, I don't talk to them often, but what I would say and what I do say when like my fans, try to challenge me on this, I say, I'll say like, and you've probably heard me say this, like I know Ashkenazi Jews who are
Mhm.
doing nothing with their life because of their beliefs, because of religion or hedonism or whatever it is, because of their philosophy, they are doing nothing with their life, implying that they potentially could have done a lot or could
Mhm.
have done a lot more. So, so choices make all the difference, and choices, of course, are driven by your ideas. Yeah, what you think is the right thing to do, or yeah, what you think is the right thing to do. However, two people with free will, both of whom are looking to maximize their potential,
Mhm.
may be drawn to very different things and also may excel at very different things. And I tend to think like the Jews are very cerebral people. Just sometimes in a harmful way. Some are just, seem to have a higher tendency to be autistic and need to kind of integrate mind and body more. And that could be very cultural, by the way. That could be early education being an abortion, early education being a fraction of what it needs to be to develop healthy people. So yeah, it is possible that in the future, when education is the equivalent of space travel, that the Jews could be so integrated with mind and body that a smart Jewish kid learns to play basketball as good as LeBron James. I guess that is possible as well, or develops rhythm similar to Marvin Gaye. But yeah, maybe early education really just makes all the difference, and that it is possible for every race to do everything as good as everyone. Meaning that it's just a matter of choosing to work at it. So yeah, I guess when I look at these different groups excelling in different fields, I tend to maybe assume, maybe to a fault, that these guys, in addition to making the certain choices, they have sort of a larger drive towards that field and a bigger talent at it. But I never apply that when it comes to like crime. When it comes to evil versus good, I don't think any moral decisions come from genetics at all, because that's 100%. That's 100% philosophy. So, people committing crimes, they're irrational. They often have many philosophical beliefs. I think tribalism is what destroyed the black community, so to speak. Like tribalism is just overwhelming in black culture, in America at least. And it's different with the Jews. The Jews are very tribal, but also very not tribal in a way, very ambitious about accomplishment. So there's different types of Jews. Again, there are the religious fanatics that are just living in cramped apartments, having a bunch of kids they can't feed, and just being total slugs who do nothing with their IQ but read religious texts all day and study it and excel at that one thing. But then there's, like you mentioned, these intellectual, Sam Harris, just to name someone who's very good at what he does, whether or not his opinions live up to that greatness. Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I'm actually questioning this now. I thought I was going to only challenge you on this, but you've actually challenged me back. All right. Fantastic.
Good. Yeah, I mean, there are clearly an extraordinarily disproportionate number of Jewish intellectuals today. But I mean, if you look at history, there are really only 4 geniuses, and only one of them is Jewish. Plato, Aristotle, Kant, and Ayn Rand. Plato and Aristotle were Greek, and Kant was like an Eastern European. Only Ayn Rand was Jewish, so that makes me skeptical that, I mean, clearly Aristotle and Ayn Rand are very similar in their own context, so the similarity, despite the genetic difference, makes me extremely skeptical that genes are such a big difference.
We don't know where Kant came from, by the way. He could have some Jew in him, just if we're going to be technical.
He claimed he was Scottish, I think, but modern people think he's from a Eastern European tribe.
Yeah, but I mean, those are the 4 real geniuses, but there's a lot of sort of lesser geniuses, right, that are definitely geniuses. Yeah. Well, I guess now I'm wondering if early development education. Yeah, I met a guy in England who is an objectivist, whatever that means, because lots of people they're objectivists, like they sincerely agree with objectivism, but they unknowingly or even knowingly they have a certain opinion which completely conflicts with objectivism here and there. I don't know if the guy who I'm about to talk about falls in that category. I'm just saying I met him in an objectivist circle, and he says he's an objectivist, and he's a sober guy like me, which was exciting, kind of, because I've never met anyone who's sober and objectivist. And so we had a conversation about all this, and he has certain ideas about like what causes people to drink, in a destructive way. And he mentioned that like alcoholics and addicts tend to have a very strong tendency to care about justice. Like it's not fair. So he says a kid that constantly says it's not fair is more likely to end up a heavy drinker, to have sort of addictive tendencies. And I said, yeah, I agree with that, but I wonder if if other people also have that like they have that in them too, but like they find different outlets than alcohol or something. But also he is of the opinion, which I'm not sure I agree with, which I kind of disagree with, but I don't consider myself an authority, a psychologist. I'm an amateur psychologist. I'm just someone who's living and thinking about what it means to be a person. And he thinks that alcoholics they were born to be alcoholics. Like they were born with a certain something missing there that like only drinking or getting high makes them feel whole again. And I'm with you about the part where getting fucked up makes that person feel whole for the first time. But to me, it's 100% philosophical. It's early development, it's ideas, it's contradictions, it's not getting what you need intellectually at a young age. And I can tell you agree with that. I think most objectivists would properly agree with that, although not all objectivists. In fact, most objectivists do not even give the topic of addiction its necessary discussion that I've seen. So yeah, yeah,
it's interesting. I have a very addictive personality. Like I don't like I abstain from anything I think will be intensely pleasurable if it's something that I think I could get addicted to, because I do. Like I will, like, food, alcohol, anything else. I mean, you could go really deep philosophically into this. It's an intrinsicist point of view, but yeah, I have a very addictive personality. I'm not sure how genetic that is versus how much it's determined by early childhood conclusions. It may be that certain genes make you more likely to reach certain childhood conclusions. There's an interaction there that's difficult to figure out. This is why I always put it in terms of, look, whenever most people end up as whatever, it is open to everyone to be an exception. And that's what's important, in my view.
It's important for everyone to be an exception, you said?
To know it's possible for you to be an exception. Whatever your predilection is, you don't have to be that way. Even if there is a real genetic difference, like if you default on your responsibilities, maybe some people will end up better, some people will end up worse. But even if you're the kind of person who would end up worse, if you take manual control, you don't have to end up worse. That's why I say it's important to know that everybody can be an exception. Even if you're in the position that you default to the negative, you don't have to be that way. Anybody can take control and escape their circumstances.
Yeah. Now we brought up, we were talking about Jews and we were talking about
Mhm.
addiction, and I came to the opinion at some point, and it's of course everything I say, it's like take it with a grain of salt, but it's I get the idea that like all Jews, all Ashkenazi Jews are addicts.
Hmm.
Like it's like inherent. It's like some of them become like the Orthodox Jews. It's like religion is their fix, sometimes in addition to actual drugs, but typically not. Typically just religion, religion, religion. Um, and then the ones who are secular, it's like they're they're like leftism or some sort of left-wing philosophy becomes their religion. And Jews being like other like everyone else, but just like on steroids. That's kind of the analogy, the imagery I mentioned the other day with Sargon on stage. It's and if that is true about Jews, it's probably true about everyone. Like everyone needs something, of course. Everyone needs a philosophy, and without the right philosophy, can end up turning to harmful sources or just to turning to other sources, some more harmful than others. So whether it's religion, whether it's a different type of religion, or whether it's a substance, everyone needs something, and I think that's where addiction comes from. It comes from you need something, you need a proper philosophy for living on Earth, and that oftentimes is not, as you know, not just going to be satisfied by having objectivist parents. It means an education that helps you develop properly as at a young age, and probably having a rational culture around you helps as well. Without that in place, people tend to become active addicts to varying degrees, but nonetheless, it's you can almost just see addiction everywhere, right? Um, so yeah, yeah, I guess that's those are my thoughts on that.
Do you think that's common to Jews?
I think Jews, and again, we don't know if it's genetic or if it's cultural or what, but again, Jews are like on steroids in everything they do. So it's like, yeah, the like a Jew needs a Jew needs a philosophy just as everyone does, but a Jew takes it seriously.
Hmm.
A Jew really takes these ideas seriously, and to the extent he doesn't have the right philosophy, he is likely to turn to substances. And a lot of Jews, a lot of secular Jews smoke weed. It's like it's just like I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of an example that's not offensive. I was going to say it's like blacks with chicken, or it's like blacks, but no, I mean, a lot of Jews smoke weed, and I just wonder if I wonder if that comes from this psychological sort of void that comes from not having the religion that that their relatives across the way have to hold them over.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's tricky. I mean,
Yeah.
Asians are a lot like Jews, in terms
Mm,
of how seriously they take things and like they get their kids to take academics very seriously. It's but it's very difficult to determine whether that's a genetic predisposition or uh, just a cultural thing. Someone had an
yeah.
idea and that kind of blew up. Um, I mean, Jews and Asians are pretty different, so
Hmm.
it'd be cultural. But yeah, like I say, it's not the end all be all whether it's genetic or cultural because
Hmm.
anybody can be an exception regardless of the culture he's in.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a tricky question whether the tendency is because look, most people empirically, statistically, go with their culture. There's no doubt about that. Independent thinkers are rare, so genetic predispositions are important. Um, that doesn't mean you're determined by your race. It just means most people let themselves be determined by their race. So that's an important difference. Most people just glide over because they're either determinists or leftist, whatever, random egalitarian nihilists who don't really care about anything. But yeah, that's something most people don't understand. You can have you can have most people be the way they are in a certain sense because of their genetics, even though they're not determined by their genetics.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So like, yeah. So like all things being equal. So like all these different races of people living in the same irrational culture, their home life is more or less okay. Not that their home life is not going to be, I don't know. All things being equal, different races might have different tendencies towards different things. By the way, so like this conversation we're having could be taken as like a serious pursuit of truth about people. Like I think I speak for us both when I say like this is like a sort of a curiosity about something that's not the most important, like very far from the most important thing. Like what's important are the ideas that a person holds. But I guess it's trying to understand what we see around us today, like the fact that certain groups behave a certain way. We agree that with the proper philosophy for living on Earth, these people would all be flourishing should they choose to accept these ideas. But
you could have an Africa. Let's take Africa, the most backwards continent on Earth.
Is the continent genetically backwards? I'm joking. Go ahead. Yeah.
If you gave Africa the Enlightenment, and then you gave the Jews or Asians, whatever,
tribal Zulu,
Islam,
yeah, that's
you would have, Africa would have skyscrapers and travel to the moon, and everyone, China and Israel and the United States would be backwards. There's no, I mean, it's clear, like you can have certain deep predispositions, but the idea is that you imbibe, they determine empirically what most people do. Most people just go with the ideas around them. Most people are not, let's say, original philosophical thinkers. The analogy I always use is I think you talked about this a little bit ago in this conversation. They choose from the menu, right? They don't create the menu. So you give people a good menu, the genes don't matter that much.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely said that a number of times in recent months or whenever, that take the supposed lowest IQ group, the Aborigines, as
right,
Stefan Molyneux mentioned on Rubin.
Yeah.
Give them Aristotle, and then give the Ashkenazis, the supposed highest group of people, give them Plato and only Plato. And of course, the Aborigines are gonna do terrific compared to the Jews. But I mean, and it's just. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we definitely, we obviously agree about this. I did have some sort of doubts about that genes are as meaningless, but like the more we talk about it, it's not that they're meaningless, but it's that they really, given the right philosophical ideas, we don't even know what people would be doing, like how different people would be. And you mentioned Jews and Asians being very different. I'm not sure they're as different as you.
Did I say they're similar?
Oh, you did say similar, like genetically.
Yeah, like they're both, like the tiger mom thing. Like they're both like very academic. They encourage their kids. You have to be really.
I thought you were saying.
I
thought you were saying they're different genetically, like they're very distant.
Oh, right. I mean, as far as
that
I
was your point.
I'm not a. Yes, you're right. Yeah, I was saying they're similar culturally, but different genetically. Although
Yeah, so
not.
I'm not sure the two groups are as different genetically as you think. Like,
Okay.
you notice how I have kind of squinty eyes a little bit, like, and like the Jews mostly would hang out in like Russia and that whole area, which is not far from Asia. It's like, I wonder if Jews are like a mutt, really. Is there a race of people not similar to Jews? Really, just the East Indians really seem to have nothing in common. Just in terms of like looks and features. Anyway,
East Indians? What, you
yeah,
mean like India?
yeah, your
Well,
favorite.
But Jews look like Jews are similar, most similar today to white people, right? Like
In skin tone, but I mean,
but that's like Indians and
mhm.
like Europeans are extremely similar. Like if you've ever seen an Indian guy, if you turn like
Yeah, true.
there's certain racial groups, like if
Yeah.
you change the skin tone, it would look bizarre. If you
Yeah.
turned an Indian guy, if you changed his skin tone to white, he would just look like a European guy.
Right.
There's a strong similarity genetically
Right.
between
All right.
Indians and Europeans.
Yeah, so like Jews, so like Asians and blacks are barely similar at all. There's like, if you can't even believe they're the same species. We're starting to sound really, really like alt-right in this conversation, but like Jews, like you can see the proximity of everyone when you look at a Jew. You see some of the features of the blacks and the funny chops, the entertainment chops. You see some of the features of the Asians and some of the cultural proximity. You see some similarities to whites. You see definitely the Semitic relationship to the Semites, the Arabs. Interesting. History is mostly unknown as far as like the history of different races of people, right? There was not a whole lot of documentation going on up until very recently. So, I mean, I know there's like ancestry.com telling you every last thing about your relatives. I don't know.
I got my genetic test results yesterday.
Well, genetics, we can know a lot, but ancestry, like where do they get that stuff from? Like how do they know where your family was? Maybe they have their means of finding out. I don't know. But you got your genetic test results. Interesting. What did you find out?
What do you think? You guess. What do I look like?
A white man?
Yeah.
100%? Is there some Mongolian? I don't know.
I am 99% European, just broadly. So I guess that's white. I thought it would be more American Indian.
Oh, you thought it'd be more white? Like, I'm 99% white. You know, I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, my brother said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not a pure white American." So
yeah. What's your brother like? Is he? Do you guys get along? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah,
that's nice.
I hate all my family except my brother.
That's cool.
I guess that's more negative than you hoped or wanted, but yeah, I love my brother and I are
That's great. That's
we
terrific.
get along great. That was a joke.
No, I got you. I didn't think you meant it literally, but that's interesting though.
I suspect he's. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, since we've been putting you under a microscope this conversation, I was just curious about your relationship to your brother. But you suspect what?
Well, I am 1% American Indian. No, I say American Indian over Native American because I think that's stupid, but American Indian. I think my brother maybe, I don't know how genetics work in terms of siblings. Maybe he's exactly the same, or I don't know how that works. But
siblings, you're the same, yeah.
I mean, but we're not identical, right? Like,
but you come from the same stock, no? Oh, well, you can have different genes given to you by different ancestors. Right. All right. All right. Well, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
So my brother has the nose of my grandmother, right?
Oh.
And my grandmother looks like, feather Indian.
Wow. You're only 1%.
Yeah, I'm 1%. So I wonder what he is. Like, that's what I was wondering. How much Indian am I? I suspected more, but
How can you be 1% Indian?
My grandmother looks like an Indian. That's what's crazy. I think that
Yeah.
line dilutes very
Yeah.
quickly because my dad looks very white too, but his mom looks like
Yeah.
she could be Pocahontas. So I don't know.
Hmm.
But I don't really care about genes that much. It's a trivial
Yeah,
thing, but
it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Well, when you're like 1% Native American, this is like the one time political correctness actually got it right. Like Native American makes more sense than American Indian. But anyway,
No, the hell with that.
Doesn't matter.
Native American, who cares?
Yeah, but how are we still calling them Indian? Like we've known for so goddamn long they're not Indian. Why are they still Indian?
Well, they're not native anyway. They came from somewhere else.
Wait, sorry, the audio cut out. You said they're not native?
Yeah, and they came across the Bering Strait, right?
True.
Across the land bridge. They're not native. That's just PC BS. Like,
true.
Whatever. I default to calling them whatever the most politically incorrect thing is. So I say American Indian.
Fair enough.
Just to be insulting. That's the only purpose.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think any American Indians really care about what they're called.
And there was a poll: most prefer American Indian over Native American. So I'm also being more PC. So maybe I should actually call them the other thing.
Yeah. They don't want to be called that. That's funny. But yeah, it's but when you're 1% American Indian, it's like 1%.
Warren kind of thing.
Yeah, well, 1% is too small for like any of your European ancestors to have mated with any of them, right?
Yeah, it must be like, I mean, but
they must have mated back before they left, Russia when they walked over.
But it's not that long, right? Like you're 50% of your parents, and then 25% of your grandparents, and then it doesn't take that many generations to get very diluted, right?
Yeah, but 1%, that's a very small number.
1/8 is only what?
True.
3 generations? It's not that long ago.
Yeah, but 1/8 is much more than 1%. Okay, you're right. You're right about this.
And 124.
I agree. I stand corrected. Hey, listen, you're the intellectual one. I'm the clown here. Yeah.
You're the Jew though, so
yes. Technically, I should be the one correcting you.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, any other topics? All right. So let me just. We should start to wind this down, but let me bring this up. So, in the Enlightenment, in the in the Age of Reason, in the days of the European philosophers before Kant, they were mostly, or they were all of them, somewhat confused between by like what reason means. So reason is when you take material acquired by the senses, you integrate it mentally. That's reason. Am I missing anything?
Logically, I would say.
Logically.
You take
now,
but
but
now
you
given through the senses, and you apply logic, which means non-contradiction.
Yeah, and then you had empiricists, which focused more heavily on the senses, and then you had rationalists, which focused heavily on thoughts, on abstractions.
Yeah, non-contradiction, logic rather than the senses. So you had the empiricists who say, well, let's look at what we see and not really not be too careful about non-contradiction. Then you have the rationalists who say, let's really take seriously non-contradiction, but maybe you can get things besides the senses, just whatever occurs to you in your mind, and then you deduce logically from that. So it's senses versus logic, which is you get logic from the self-evident fact of awareness. So that's a contradiction, but those were the two sides of the Enlightenment. Yes,
and not one of them pointed out that you need to combine the two, or is that just
they never fully worked it out. So yeah, Hume was my ex-girlfriend always made fun of me for saying Hume, like Y-U-M-E.
You also say human. I've noticed.
Yes, human. What?
Human.
What
Whatever.
do you think?
It's how you
Human?
listen.
Hugh? Oh, come on.
I
Okay,
used to do
fine.
that too, but yeah.
Used to.
Yeah, I changed. Now I go human
No, I will never
and
change. Okay, so Hume
mhm.
was kind of the full collapse of empiricism. It was just, we can't use logic at all. Logic doesn't make any sense because of what I said before. If we get it from reality, how can we apply it to reality? So it's just perception without logic. And then you have other people like Descartes saying, look, we have to use logic, and look, the senses can fool us. Who the hell knows what our senses say? We just have to take what's compellingly clear to us, what just seems so clear when we think about it. So when you have an idea and it just makes sense, you say, okay, this premise must be true. Doesn't matter if I got it from perception. It just seems like it must make sense. And then you logically deduce what must be true if it doesn't contradict this premise that must just be true, regardless of its relationship to perception. So those were the real problems of the Enlightenment.
And
Kant was allegedly trying to reconcile rationalism and empiricism, but he took the worst of both worlds rather than the best of both worlds, as Ayn Rand did.
what did he take? What did he explain that he took the worst of both worlds?
So what Kant did was say, okay, we can have logic in the sense that the phenomenal world, the fake world of perception, is logical. Look, the world we see, we can predict, we can have rationality about it because it's fake. Like, it's subjective. The world that we know is just our consciousness interpreting the world. So the world we know is a product of our minds. So we can predict the world because we create it. That was Kant's view.
Oh.
So Kant was saying we can have science and religion because science is the phenomenal world. Science is induction, generalization. It's empiricism and logic because our minds create the world. So this is all fake. Science pertains to the fake world, which we live in. And then we can have religion, free will, which doesn't make any sense according to him, God, the afterlife, etc., because that pertains to the noumenal world. That pertains to the world before it is processed by our minds. So we can have both science and religion. Science pertains to the world as processed by us, that we live in materially. And then the noumenal world, the true world, that's the pre-processed real world in which contradictions exist, because non-contradiction logic, that's just us interpreting the world in a way we can understand it. The real world, it's not bound by non-contradiction. So the real world can have free will, it can have God, it can have the afterlife, it can have all this other stuff. So we can have science here and then religion in another world, and we can have both. And that was what Kant made possible.
And you're convinced, or are you convinced, that Kant was lying? Did he believe what he was saying? Did he know what he was doing, or was it a sincere attempt to explain this ongoing conflict in the world of philosophy? Or is that just, we don't know?
I think that's I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's either you're honest or you're evil. Like, I think you can be dishonestly honest. You can hold on to an honest view through dishonest means. Right? Like, so you can, okay, should I buy this car? Should I go out tonight with my friends and spend a lot of money? I don't know what's in my bank account. How much money do I have? Well, what can you do? You can ignore, you can say, I'm not going to look what's in my bank account. I'm just going to go hang out tonight with my friends. Now, you might really believe when you're hanging out, I didn't check. So I might really have enough money to afford this night out. You don't know, but you might honestly think you do have enough. because you were dishonest and didn't look, right? So you honestly think you might have enough. That's not a lie when you say you might have enough to hang out with your friends tonight, but it's based on the dishonesty of not looking when you knew you should have looked to see how much money you had in your account.
Yeah.
So that's what I think Kant was doing. It was a uh, I don't think he would. I don't think he knew totally explicitly that he was wrong, but I think somewhere in the back of his mind he knew I'm ignoring the facts. I haven't thought the way I'm supposed to thought.
Okay. And this mind-body dichotomy had been going on, however, for a while. You had the rationalists and the empiricists, the former being focused on the mind, and the latter, the empiricists, focused on the body, as in the senses, rather than just non-contradiction in the abstract realm. And did they call themselves empiricists and rationalists, or is it objectivists that classify them that way?
It's not objectivists. I don't. I think it was around at the time. It's definitely
It's a thing in the world.
philosophical categorization outside of objectivism, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they would have considered themselves that. Probably, I think.
Do you think
I mean, they knew the differences?
Do you think if Ayn Rand had stayed completely away from politics, like say she just never brought up capitalism, do you think her philosophy might have been greeted a bit more warmly?
I think it would have been greeted more negatively. I mean, this is the thing. People say, oh, well, Ayn Rand was successful. So why don't you think you can be successful today? Well, it's the same reason I think Alex Epstein is successful, because he's talking about an extremely controversial, narrow concrete. Here's the thing I think about. Would Ayn Rand have been nearly as successful today if all she had written was Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology? Now, that's the most important thing she ever wrote. But nobody would have cared if all she wrote was that. Same thing with, I mean, whatever. I'll get into Alex on an episode soon. But no, I think no, I think she would have been much less famous and successful popularly if she had not gone into politics at all.
I mean, would the intellectuals have greeted her a bit more warmly if they read Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology and nothing else?
I don't know. It's harder to answer, but I don't think so, because I think they're dishonest, but I don't think they're so dumb as to not realize that what she was saying was completely original and opposite of what they were saying. I mean, it didn't take her saying laissez-faire capitalism was the only way for them to understand what she was saying incorrectly. They know. I mean, they're smarter than,
Yeah.
they would know. They'd reject her regardless.
Interesting. Well, I am looking forward to reading Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. I'm going to keep reading Atlas, and then I guess Introduction maybe next. I'll have to pick what to read next. Have you read The Cave in the Light?
That's about Plato, right?
And Aristotle. I think it like, I guess you haven't read it. If you're not sure which book I'm talking about, but it's I think it's the same author wrote a book called something like How the Scots Created Europe or something, or how the Scots, did something or another. The West created the West. So The Cave in the Light is supposed to be about Aristotle and Plato and how different periods through history were influenced by one or the other. So I don't know. I was wondering if you've read that since.
No, I haven't. But The Cave is very. I mean, that's
and of course
illusion. I think the Scots creating the modern world. I think Gavin refers to that. Yeah, refers to that all the time.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you might have been the one to tell me that.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Well, interesting. So yeah, anyway, I got all this reading I got to do. Now I'm writing again, which is great. I got this educational rap song, which is going to be interesting. It's definitely a little bit more after school special, but it's like, it's got some foul language, and it's got some unconventional means of expressing ideas, which of course is going to piss off everyone probably. It's like, no matter what I do, that's kind of me playing the victim, of course. Like, I know what I'm doing, I just choose to do it anyway. But it's not like no matter what I do, I get hated. I can certainly do other things, but I want to do what I want to do. So but yeah, no, I remember so I asked you earlier if you ever took issue with anything that I've done. I was just curious, since I know like a handful of objectivists out there probably have and or would consider what I do to be, inappropriate or something.
Do you know, has anybody ever given you that feedback? Actually?
Nah, here and there. Not exactly, but I've heard. I've got my sources, but I don't think I'm like that big on anyone's radar. But I know not everyone's into it. And it's offensive, and it's heavy on the racial stereotypes, which is obviously, it's collectivism or whatever. People.
Yeah. So okay. All I have to say is really what I told you last time. Like, as far as the racism goes, I'm totally fine with that. I love racist jokes. I think they're hilarious because to me, I'm laughing at the idea that anybody could be racist. That is hilarious to me. The only problem I have, the only thing that I might think is objectively objectionable about what you do is the promiscuous vulgarity. I think promiscuous profanity is bad for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
I don't think you're immoral necessarily for doing that. It might just be the cultural context you grew up in, or I don't know. That's a harder thing to judge, but I think there's definitely a bad thing about swearing promiscuously. I don't do it. You've probably noticed.
Yeah. To me, I think the swearing is funny because for the same reason that the racial stereotypes are funny. And the racial stereotypes are funny on a number of levels. It's not so much making fun of a racist person, but it's making fun of the idea that people are determined, that a person doesn't decide what he does. It's like, oh, he's black, he's automatically reaching for that.
No, I mean, that's the same thing to me.
Oh, okay. And then the other reason the racial stereotypes are funny is that how unnecessary it is. Like, I can just kind of go close to it and like be like, oh, he kind of went there, but instead I'm just like doubling down, and then, oh no, and she's gotten so far past lines, like, why is he still going? So and to me, swearing unnecessarily is why it's funny to me. Like, and sometimes it's just necessary, like lyrically, like when I have a space to fill, adding the F word is the way to do it. And in my particular style of entertainment, that works with the format. So it's not hacky to just swear. Like if I'm the singer of a rock band and I keep throwing swear words in there, that is hacky. That is, he can't write good lyrics, so he's just throwing swear words in. In my case, it's he can't write good lyrics, so he writes offensive shit all the time. I don't know. I'm joking, but yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, I mean, fair opinion. I don't fault you for it. I think I'm not crazy about the cultural context, because as you and I know, I cannot use that as an excuse at this point. But I think to me the excessive swearing is funny for the same reason as the excessive stereotypes. It's just that the fact that it's unnecessary and just so obnoxious is what makes it funny, what makes it entertaining. It's interesting. I've been watching my own videos recently. Just kind of like in the morning, especially like I'm having my morning espresso shot and just letting my own videos play. It's good. It's good for the soul. It's other than just reflecting on what I've worked on. It's funny and it's uplifting. So I'm starting to understand why people watch it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love watching my own stuff too. I guess that's
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought I heard you will say once you hate your own, or you used to hate the sound of your voice, and now
yes, now I love it.
good, good,
Weird.
healthy.
I don't, you
Hmm.
know, I don't know. I still think I am objectively pretty nasally, but there's some, and I have a vocal fry. You know how I kind of like croak, like my voice is kind of croaking, like it's like a
Hmm.
digital kind of thing. Like every sound comes out like a bit by bit. But there's some people I really like who sound like that. So I don't know. Maybe that's okay.
I mean,
Um,
everything's okay in if you're doing the best you can, like if you're great at expressing what you're trying to express, then having a weird type of speech issue it adds charm. Just like sorry to compare you to your favorite person, Peterson. The fact that he sounds like Kermit the
Kermit
Frog.
the Frog, yeah.
That's a meme. And I think the fact that Yaron Brook has a weird speech, I don't know if impediment is the nice way to say it, but that he sounds like he learned how to speak in Boston or somewhere.
I hate Boston accents. I would never compare your own to that, regardless of his inability to pronounce R's.
Mhm.
I,
Well,
the first time I heard your own, I thought it was
mhm,
weird. I was like, wow, that's weird. He
mhm.
pronounces R's like W's, but after
There's
the first
no
time I heard him, I was totally fine with it. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, yeah. There's no soft R in Hebrew.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
just So
I see.
Yaron.
I
But
see.
when you translate Yaron to American,
I see.
Yaron is not. So I don't know if that's what. But when he
It
speaks
must
Hebrew,
be. It's like,
I've heard him speak Hebrew, and he speaks it perfectly. He doesn't
hmm.
have it like any sort of impediment. But anyway, I've always seen his speech condition as a positive, as much as I would guess maybe he wishes he could get rid of it or something, but I see it as a positive in the world we live in, having some flair. I see it as I
Yeah,
see it as
yeah.
a calling
You've
card.
listened to Ayn Rand, right? Like,
Yeah, but she was not known for her speaking. She was known for her writing. And
yeah, I mean, she was still a good speaker, though, but it's funny how she talked sometimes. Like,
yeah, I sub
Nazis, she would always say Nazis.
Nancy, yeah,
Nazi.
yeah.
That's funny.
um Yeah, but I have not seen a ton of speeches from her. I've only
Mm,
listened to a handful of. I listened to like some of her Q&A highlights,
mm.
and uh, and then whatever's on YouTube of her,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
watched.
yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, you use some of those
mhm.
clips in your videos, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in general, having a sort of a distinguishing
Yeah.
speech characteristic, I think is a positive. So, yeah, it's good stuff. So anyway, what's next for you? You got some more videos, podcast episodes, I guess I should call them.
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions. I just have a big document with
Hmm.
questions I've received. I've transferred the or transformed the podcast into a Q&A thing, which is what I always wanted. So I have a
Yeah.
bunch of questions on there. I'm also planning on doing some gaming things like you are. I want to play some it's
Nice.
not going to be live streams though because my audience is so small, nobody
Hmm.
would show up. So I just have some topics. I'm going to record myself talking, playing games. I think probably Metal Gear Solid 5 and Hitman
Hmm.
probably. And I don't know, Hitman might be too complicated. But yeah, I have some topics I want to. I have a big list of questions for the podcast, and then questions for or comments and questions that I want to not do on the podcast, but just do just while I'm
Hmm.
talking off the cuff. Um, so I've noticed when you play Keen, like you talk some. It seems really hard for you to concentrate on both. Like you will
Mm.
just stop playing the game and just look at the camera and talk. So I
Yeah.
wonder if you have any tips on that because I haven't done it yet, and I thought, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this simultaneously.
I mean, it's hard. It's easier for me to play like simpler side scrolling stuff like Donkey Kong Country. I can play that while talking to someone. So it's hard to say, but I don't know. I would something I want to stop doing is talk about the game that I'm playing, because
Mm,
some people are just listening. So maybe
yeah,
just
yeah,
a quick comment like, "Oh, the guy got me," but then
yeah.
back to the topic. So some of your older videos, you were like walking through the house and just talking, and
Oh, really?
you're right, surprisingly good in that you're talking about complicated stuff. You're
Hmm.
talking about abstract shit, and sorry for swear promiscuously, but you're talking about abstract stuff, and it's coming natural. So I'm looking forward to that. There is a certain charm in riffing and the open format that is perhaps lost when when you focus more heavily. So
Oh,
anyway,
you
I'm
think? Do
looking.
you think I should go back to that? Because
No, 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 no. Do what you're doing, and then I like what you're saying. Continuing more of the same of what you're doing, but then stretching a bit with this gymnasium that is gaming.
yeah,
I'm
the thing is, I would. Okay, it's. I find it really, really hard to talk off the cuff when I'm
Mhm,
sitting here like I am now. Like I have this microphone in front of me. I
mhm,
can't walk around. Like that's why I used to use my phone. I would just walk around and talk. When I sit down and I find myself getting into some serious thinking, I get up without even thinking about it. I
mm,
cannot think stationary. I am like I always joke that I'm a peripatetic. Peripatetic means like walking around, and it also meant followers of Aristotle.
mm,
So that works for me in both ways because I'm Aristotelian and I can't not walk
yeah,
around. Um, so like I love walking and talking. I like it's funny you notice that about how I can do that simultaneously. I can't
mhm,
do it not simultaneously. That goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of this video when I was talking about how you can like subconsciously I I focus my mind on something. I do two things at once so that I
mhm.
can get in the zone. That's what I do when I'm walking and talking. It's so much easier. Um, so the only reason I stopped doing that is because I don't think my phone has as the audio quality isn't as good. So
Yeah, it's not as it's never your phone quality is not going to be as good. But that's interesting. You can probably get like a mic stand maybe, or you can hold um like
mm,
this. Like you can hold it and walk around. I've seen commentary people do it. It's definitely possible. So or there maybe a headset or if
yeah,
that. So yeah, that's not uncommon by the way. I mean, as you're saying, I'm thinking maybe I should set up the mic stand and do my commentary videos down here, in this room, because yeah, sitting and talking. I mean, it's not uncommon. That's why speaking on stage is a great
yeah,
exercise, and
yeah,
I mean that's something that that Toastmasters encourages. Don't just stand behind the podium unless you have notes to read there. Walk out in front of the podium and get close to the people. So yeah, that's all interesting. That's
yeah.
all.
And I'm very big at gesticulating. I make big
Mhm.
gestures, and I have to move when I'm talking. It's like thinking and moving are just connected to me.
Yeah,
I can't just think without moving.
right on. Well, this has been a great conversation. Maybe we can do a gaming stream
Sure,
on my gaming channel. And I
sure.
mean we can do it on your gaming as well once you start doing that. But I'd love to link up. Maybe I can stream from my laptop and have you in there like over Skype, and we can, and then there's a chat room. We've got people asking me questions that I get a
Yeah, that's
little bit of.
fun. Because I
Yeah.
always find myself when you're doing your gaming thing, I pause and I answer the questions myself, and
Well, everybody wins. I don't have to answer them, but I can watch you answer them,
Mm,
and maybe add some input, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, and we can explore these topics, and we don't have to deal with the same. I don't have to deal with the same questions over and over again.
mm.
So yeah, that would be fun. So I'll
Yeah,
definitely we'll be talking about that. And other than that, Looking forward to seeing more stuff from you. This has been an interesting conversation because our last, conversation that we did, it was still sort of in the vein of like letting the audience get to know who we are and what we're about, and we kind of had the audience in mind. In this case, it was mostly just kind of like exploring stuff together that we want to talk about, and there's something less marketable about that. That's less, this is not maybe what I would send out to a network and ask them to sign us. And and also a new listener or viewer might not give an F about what we're talking about. But it's still great stuff, and the best thing is we get to take what we've learned today, and we get to take this fuel and apply it to our various content creations. So I've got some content I'm creating, and I've got some more reading to do, and you've got the same. So that's terrific. All right, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just it was fun. I always have so much to say. Like I can go in a million directions on anything and I have to rein myself in.
Mm,
I thought about what would we talk about when we were talking about talking, and I
mm.
had like, I don't know, 10 times as many things to talk about. So it feels like we barely got started. So we'll just save that for next time or whenever we talk. And
Cool.
yeah, no, I yeah. Um
Cool. Well, there's no reason we can't do this more often. So
yeah, we should. It's
let's
really fun to me if you're open to it. I'm totally
absolutely.
open to it.
It's a real treat, like I said at the beginning of this, other than being a real cool guy, you are very knowledgeable, and people don't have access to that level of knowledge
Hmm.
typically. So, you might not compare yourself to Peacock, but from where I mean, yeah, maybe you would, but
I'm pretty arrogant, so
yeah, sure. But from where I'm standing, getting to pick at your brain comes pretty close. I'm not sure what I would ask Peacock that I haven't
mm.
had the opportunity to ask you. So it's great stuff, and let's keep this going. All right. To Charles Two's audience, thank you for joining us. To my audience, and to all the mutual. You've gotten some new subscribers from me. Is that true? You've gotten some.
I would guess it's hard to
Oh,
say.
don't give a percentage out. Don't be like 99%. No, I'm joking. What were you gonna say? You're gonna say, yeah, you got some.
I would guess half are
All
from
right,
you.
cool.
I mean,
Um,
I don't know. I think I have like 420 or something. It's
mhm.
pretty small, but still, whenever I get a bunch of subscribers, I think, okay, I either just did a full video on Jordan Peterson or MGTOW or something
Yeah.
popular, or Rucka must have just mentioned me in one of his videos.
Oh,
And
that's great. I mean,
I mean, you have been incredibly generous with that kind of thing, by the way. I can't let
it's
that pass without expressing my gratitude. You're
well.
always kind with that kind of thing. You offered to let me put this up to myself to get traffic, and you plug me everywhere. That's incredibly generous. Can't thank you enough.
Well, no, it's no problem. And when I don't know how to answer something, I'm just like, go ask him. Charles, he's better than I am at explaining this stuff and understanding it to explain it. And that's great. Then that's really cool that people actually listen to me, that
Yeah.
I can recommend a channel and people actually are willing to give it a chance. So, and thank you for living up to that recommendation. So, yeah, let's keep this going. Let's each respectively work on our content. Let's keep talking to each other. Who knows if someday we are the future of the intellectual. Whatever. I'll be the artistic wing of the future. The artistic, the shitpost wing of the future. Anyway, all right. So, all right, we'll talk soon,
I hope so.
and deuces.
Yeah. It was nice talking to you. Have a nice day.
All right.